Jersey Sports Station. You ready? Let's go.
It's alive!
From the fields to the courts, and the gridiron to the tracks.
Electrifying sports talk from start to finish.
You're going wire to wire.
With Diesel and Cole Bryson.
On the Fan Upstate.
Would this South Carolina Gamecocks team be 10-2 with an ACC schedule? Probably, but this South Carolina team would not exist if South Carolina was playing football in the ACC. Welcome to Wire. He's Cole Bryson. My name is Diesel. It's Hate Week. It's Palmetto Bowl week, even though I hear from sources that a lot of people don't like calling it the Palmetto Bowl, but it is what it is. That's how it's been branded, like it or not. So I want to start the show with this discussion, Cole, something that's always kind of annoyed me about you South Carolina and you Clemson fans. You argue belief just as much, if not more, than you argue fact. What do I mean by that? You, collective, you argue the unknowable and the unverifiable as if it was fact, because you believe certain things to be true about yourselves and about one another without any hesitation whatsoever. Cole, am I right or am I wrong when I say South Carolina and Clemson fans hate each other because they're exactly the same, flip sides of the same coin?
There is a lot of truth to that. To your point, maybe it's the what ifs that we argue, that we talk about, right? And I think I would agree with you, but I also believe, Diesel, that we as fans in this state argue and care more about the other team just as much as we do about our team. And I've seen that this year. I've seen that this year more than I have in a lot of years past. What I mean is, think about it.
Suck.
They both suck. and I swear to you, Diesel, the fans, the friends of mine that are Clemson and South Carolina fans, if you're having a conversation with them this year, the conversation very quickly turns into, well, at least Carolina sucks. Well, at least Clemson sucks. And it's not about them. It's about the other team. But guess what? It's always been that way. It always will be that way. That's why it's one of the best rivalries in the country. It's incredible.
JB on the stream says, I agree. Both fan bases are exactly the same. And Madcraft says, Cole, you are a wild man. If those of you who are not watching on the stream, you're missing Cole.
You're missing out.
Decked out head to toe as one of them Dallas, Texas hayseeds.
Yeah.
He's got the 88 jersey on. He's got the chain around his neck with the star.
Oh, it's obnoxious.
Got the cowboy hat on. Man, he is decked out, ready to throw it in the face of Eric Hines. More like die, Eagles, die instead of fly, Eagles, fly.
Well, when you walk outside after beating the Eagles, the air just is a little more crisp. The sun's a little brighter. I'm telling you, there's nobody I hate worse than Eagles fans. I'm not kidding. I hate Eagles fans more than anybody.
We got that promo running where you're giving it to Dawn Staley.
I can't stand them. And you know what? You just said it. Die, Eagles, die. We are at 5 o'clock. I'll give you a preview of it right now, but at 5 o'clock in Overreaction Monday, I'm going to teach the TOLO'S this song. We're all going to sing it together. You ready? We watch y'all cry. Cry, Eagles, cry. I'm telling you, there's nothing like it.
It keeps on giving.
There's nothing like it.
Fry, Eagles, fry. You could say sigh. Oh, sigh, Eagles, sigh. Die, Eagles, die. Buy, Eagles, buy. You got all kinds of ways that you can have fun with that statement.
I love it, man. I love beating the Eagles. I know it's Carolina Clemson week, but, man, this week's just so much better. I cannot wait to hear from Eric Hines and all the Eagle fans out there. I love it, man.
It's, this rivalry is fun. I say it's fun because y'all are exactly the same. You call each other inbred and rednecks. Clemson fans call South Carolina fans that, and vice versa. You have the same coots and taters back and forth, ping-ponging all week long, all year long, which never, ever stops. But Cole, one of my pet peeves when it comes to Clemson and South Carolina fans, and I grew up in a Clemson family. My grandfather went there. My sister went there. I had like 2 or 3 cousins that went there. Nobody in my family went to South Carolina, but that's because, we're predominantly from North Carolina. But a handful made their way down to Clemson. My grandpa, like I said, played football there back in the 40s. I get really, really fed up with the argument, well, what if Clemson was playing in the SEC? They'd have a really terrible record. Or what if South Carolina played in the ACC? They'd win 10 games every year. I would argue that when South Carolina fans do that, and we get it all year long, not just because it's hate week, we get it all year long. I would say that fans on both sides make these declarative statements that this team would do this or that team would do that against each other's conference. And you're arguing that point in bad faith because everything would look different if you plopped Clemson into the SEC or if you plopped South Carolina into the ACC.
But they don't understand that.
No, they don't understand that. And they won't see logic. They won't see fact because, again, that is an unknowable, unarguable idea that you just don't know. And I make this point, Cole, because I believe if you were to take South Carolina on a macro level, so a large scale level, if you took South Carolina, put them in the ACC, I think Shane Beamer in South Carolina would find it incredibly difficult to attract guys like Dylan Stewart, Nick Harbor, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, Lenoris Sellers. 3 of those guys are 5 stars. Lenoris Sellers playing like a 5-star, probably going to go in the first round. I think if they were long-standing members of the ACC, you're probably not getting all of those guys to South Carolina because there are guys who are SEC or bust, and that's all they want to do. And there are guys who Shane Beamer is probably getting, and I'm not specifically talking about Stuart Harbor and Brownlow-Dindy, but a lot of those high 4 stars, a lot of those high 3 stars, they choose South Carolina, even though they know they're not going to be a perennial conference championship game threat because they see themselves as SEC caliber talent.
And there is something to be said about playing in the SEC. There's no doubt about that. I will say, though, I believe to a point you're right. However, I would say that now in this new era, this new landscape where all of a sudden money matters more than it ever has, I think in this new era, you will see, especially for example, with a team like Virginia Tech, I believe that you will see an ACC school have the ability to go out and get the best of the best. Because to your point, at one time, Diesel, guess what? Maybe, just maybe, kids did care about playing in the SEC. It just means more. And I still think that's true. I think a lot of people still want to play in the SEC. It's the best conference. It's the deepest conference. And you have incredible talent in the SEC. I'm just saying in today's landscape, I believe you'll see a James Franklin. I believe you could have seen Dabo Swinney over the past 5 years if he were to have embraced this new era of college football. I think with this NIL and this transfer portal, it will become very easy to attract that same talent to the ACC. Wow. I could be wrong, but man, money talks.
James Franklin obviously knows how to attract talent to the biggest and best programs. As a blue chip program in the Big Ten, he knows what to say to those 5-star guys and those 4-star guys to try to get them to sign on the dotted line and come to him. Now, we'll see if he doesn't have the same amount of success and isn't on the same stages that he was at Penn State, if that will hold, if that will last, if it'll persist while he's at Virginia Tech. But, I would say, and this is the argument I made when it came to Cincinnati, when it came to Houston, when it came to UCF joining the Big 12. See what happens when you take a program that already enjoys a lot of success and you give them more money and you give them more resources and you give them a higher profile. I would say that about Clemson. If you took Clemson and put them in the SEC, they would enjoy obviously a lot more money coming in. They would enjoy that higher profile. They would probably get a handful of guys, maybe not a ton, but a handful of guys that they currently can't get their mitts on because they want to play in the SEC. They'd rather go play for a middle-of-the-pack SEC team than an elite ACC team because, well, they fancy themselves playing in the biggest and best conference. So my argument is essentially if you want to just make I'm thinking about siloed this season, this team, if you put them in that conference, maybe. But I'm saying if you actually put that team in that conference and had them as if they existed in that league for a decade before or more, then you're talking about a completely different program.
Well, to that argument a little bit, let me bring this conversation point to the airwaves, because this conversation piece ties in directly to what you're talking about. You asked the question about South Carolina fans and Clemson fans arguing about what ifs more than they actually do valid points. The one that I can think of that's most recent that fits itself into this conversation is that when Clemson went on their national championship run, this was probably 4 years ago or so, and I've been asked this question a million times, Diesel, but I was asked, and you were asked, and we were all asked the question of if Clemson were in the SEC, would they still have won those 2 national championships and played for 4? That was the question that I was always asked. And I always said, those runs that Clemson had with Deshaun Watson, with Trevor Lawrence, they were the best teams in college football. We know that, hands down. They were elite, Diesel. However, I think there is something to be said, and I know these are what ifs, because going back to your points about the programs looking different, they would look different. But think about it. I always said, to answer that question, we know that Clemson had a very navigable path in the ACC. And sometimes, Diesel, even with that navigable path, they still tripped up. They still tripped up. And in the SEC, I always said I think there were more opportunities in the SEC for Clemson or anybody to trip up. Does that mean that those teams wouldn't have won a national championship? No. But we all know that you just can't have too many trip-ups. So I bring that up to your original question of these kind of conversations, these almost what if it's never going to happen kind of conversations.
I mean, I would argue if Clemson were in the SEC, Clemson would have more depth on that roster than what they had that season, right? All that matters is they won the championship game. But some fans want to move the goalposts. Well, what if they had to play Florida and Tennessee and South Carolina and Kentucky and Vanderbilt every single week? Well, they didn't. They only had to play one game against them in the championship game, and they beat them. That's what matters, right? They won the championship games. You can argue depth all you want to, but that's a handful of sand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything when one team's ones who are healthy are better than the other team's ones who were healthy. I would argue Clemson probably would have been a better team those years, considering that Dabo was able to put together a team of that caliber, that amount of talent in those seasons.
Could have been.
Then you could argue, again, this is an unknowable, unquantifiable, you could argue that Dabo would have been able to stack talent all the way down that depth chart to be better than they actually were in that season. We just don't know. We can't argue that. Now, could we argue that South Carolina, if they were legitimately placed into the ACC in that conference for the long-term future, they're going to be in there for 40 years. Would South Carolina be one of the best programs in the ACC? Probably. I mean, they'd be right there on par with the biggest stadiums. They would have, they'd be right there on par with fantastic fan support. They would have some residual perfume on them from having been an SEC team. I think they'd thrive. I think they would absolutely thrive in the ACC, but I think over time, South Carolina's recruiting would probably slide not all the way to the mean, but I think it would regress towards the mean just a little bit.
Well, I would answer that question, Diesel, by asking the question, if we're playing the hypothetical, if you put South Carolina in the ACC, why wouldn't they be good? That's kind of how I answered the question in my head, because I agree with you. I think they would, but why wouldn't they be?
Shane Beamer would instantly be one of, if not the most charismatic coach in the conference. I'll give him that.
Yeah, and you talk about having resources. Like, I'm not saying being in one conference versus the other automatically qualifies you and quantifies you for different resources that you can have at your disposal, Diesel, to make your program better. But I do believe that there's just something to be said about who you play week in and week out.
Sure.
And you know, we saw it firsthand. Like Carolina this past, 5-game stretch before the Coastal, Diesel, it was brutal. And you go back to the point you made a minute ago about recruiting. Here's the way you would answer it. If recruiting looked the same, then yes. To answer your question, if recruiting at South Carolina were to look the same, then yes, they would dominate the conference.
And I'm arguing that it probably wouldn't be and basically can't be.
Then it might not be.
But Clemson is in that 50-something% range when it comes to the blue chip ratio. So it is possible. Florida State is there. Clemson is there right now. I don't know who is third in the ACC when Miami. Sorry, Miami was better, has more blue chips than both Clemson and Florida State. You could argue that it certainly can be done with the right coach and the right resources. So I'm not saying that's why I'm not saying that South Carolina would slip all the way down to the range of like a Duke or a Virginia when it comes to recruiting. I am saying they would probably slip down just a little bit because there's guys who want to play in the SEC who will go basically anywhere in the SEC just so that they can wear that patch.
And there might be truth to that, but ultimately I believe, to answer the hypothetical question, if South Carolina were in the ACC, I believe recruits with an IL being able to be paid, publicly paid, I believe players across the country would start to see the same thing they saw at Clemson 5 years ago, that, wow, this program can be really good, and this program, if South Carolina were in the ACC, this program can compete for a conference championship every year. So you bring up players want to wear the patch that says SEC. And while that may be true, I would say that players want to play for championships. Players want to win championships. And guess what? Dabo Swinney has been able to bring players into Clemson and win championships. There haven't been many recruiting classes, period, where Dabo Swinney's teams have not won championships. They just hadn't happened. So I believe ultimately, if you put South Carolina in the ACC, you could say, guys, you're going to be competing for a championship every year. And I do believe that competing for a championship means something.
And I've been laughed off of these airwaves before for saying that South Carolina should do everything in their power to rejoin the ACC. I've been laughed off these airwaves because my point is winning is fun. And South Carolina would come into the ACC with a ton of hype and probably have a good chance to go to the ACC championship game in year number 1, if not year number 2. But I get laughed off the airwaves every time I say it because fans really cared. Maybe more than players do, to your point. Fans care about that logo on the jersey maybe more than the players do.
And the reality of it is, though, Diesel, you want to be – here's what it all boils down to. You want to be in the best conference, and you want to win in the best conference. Nobody wants to be the bottom dweller in the best conference.
But if you can't win in the best conference, what should you do?
I know, and that's the thing. Now, though, you have less of an excuse because you can be a Vanderbilt and go get good. You can be a Mississippi State and go get good. You can. So, like 10 years ago, I'm with you. Those bottom dwellers, they never moved off the bottom. They were feeding on those shrimp and whatever else kind of, whatever else sits on the bottom of the ocean floor. They were feeding off the bottom for a long, long time, right? But now you don't have to. You don't have to leave the conference to get better. You can go spend money. You can go do what the NFL's done and buy players.
I did see a post over the weekend, and this sounds like blasphemy. The idea that the NCAA should have the power to move teams around conferences based on how good they are, to sort of redistribute the power. This was a discussion that was really about divisions in conferences, and I know Sunbelt's the only one that still has it, but I've seen the argument that the conference and that the NCAA should be able to move teams around to redistribute. So imagine the NCAA saying, hey, Alabama, guess what? Now you're in the ACC. Florida, now you're in the ACC 10 years ago, not now, obviously. But Oklahoma, you're going back to the Big 12. Sorry, I know you made the move, but guess what? You're going back because they need some help over there.
Diesel, we normally have the state segment every Thursday with Chapel Fowler and Jordan Kay. However, newsflash, we're not on the air Thursday. Thursday's Thanksgiving. So Chapel Fowler chose today to join us. It is the state segment with Chapel Fowler of the state newspaper next.
with Cole, Bryson, and Diesel on the Fan Upstate.
A little early, but who doesn't love early? The state segment is usually on Thursday, but with Thursday being Turkey Day, Thanksgiving, Chapel Fowler kind enough to join us on Monday and talk Clemson, talk South Carolina. Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper. You hear him and Jordan Kay of the State every other week. Chapel, Clemson, South Carolina this Saturday after what you saw with both teams in their tune-up this past Saturday. The Gamecocks opened as 2.5-point favorites at home on Saturday's matchup, or for Saturday's noon o'clock matchup. Your opening thoughts on the opening line that favored the Gamecocks by 2.5?
Yeah, good to be on with you guys. Cole, I love the Cowboys fit today.
Do you love it, or are you just saying that?
I think it's great. I mean, I'm a Panthers fan, not a Cowboys fan, but I love the commitment.
Big game tonight. Yeah,
big time. Can't wait for it. I think that betting line is pretty fair. It's the first time I looked since 2013, so 12 years ago, that South Carolina was favored versus Clemson, home or away, just in general. Last time it was obviously during that Spurrier one where they won 5 in a row, but I think that line's pretty spot on. You know, I think a 1.5, 2.5, somewhere in that range is where that was going to end up, and it definitely should be in favor of the home team. I mean, record is one thing, but anybody watching the Gamecocks eye test wise could tell you they certainly passed that. So I think the fact they're at home, the fact they've had a lot of close SEC games, and the fact that Clemson is doing its own thing, as we've talked about many times this year, I think it's pretty fair.
You know, Chapel, I was in Columbia on Saturday for that blowout over Coastal Carolina. I know a lot of our TOLO'S, and you were at the Clemson game. You don't learn much when Clemson is playing Furman. You don't learn a whole lot when South Carolina beats down Coastal in that way. I guess the hope is everybody has a good time and nobody gets hurt. But in the second half, Clemson, where you were, they were playing a lot of their backups. And, you know, we got to see Chris Denson with a lot of action, and he looked really good running the football. Would you look at that second half of that game as kind of an early tryout for Christopher Vezina, Trent Pierman, and now Chris Denson to say who is going to be the heir apparent next year? Or in your mind, is it still just, you know, Vezina by a mile and these guys have a lot of catching up to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, given there's no preseason games in college football, you kind of have to use a game like that, even if it's only the second half. Like, that has to be a data point in your evaluation, because you're essentially going to get that, and then maybe your group of 5 game, which Clemson was trailing 16-0 in halftime to Troy, so that didn't happen, and then like practice. So you need reps like that. So I think it was kind of not a tryout where, you know, exactly, you know, everything that happened on Saturday was going to determine the pecking order and this and that and was the end all be all. But I think you saw, you know, for the most part, Vezina looked a little hesitant, not incredibly sharp, certainly not, in my opinion, worthy of, at this moment right now, being handed the keys to the offense in 2026 with no questions asked. Not to say he can't get there or something. You know, he looked good against SMU, but I think what we saw even against a lesser opponent on Saturday was kind of what has hampered him when he has played for Clemson. And I think Denson provided a lot of juice. I mean, that crowd was fired up when he touched the ball. You could kind of feel the anticipation. I mean, huge play by him to rip off that 50-yard run, because that was at the point where Clemson had to bring its starting defense back into the game because Furman was about to make it a 2-possession game, and they get the stop with the starting defense, get it back, and then Denson kind of puts the game away. So yeah, I'll say that there was a lot more cheering for Denson than Vezina on Saturday, but just given how exciting of a player he is, that's kind of to be expected, and the fact we really hadn't seen him at all this year. So I understand why people were a little more juiced up, and he deserved it. I mean, the stats were really good. Obviously, the opponent is whatever, but he did a good job.
Chapel Fowler of the State newspaper. You know, when we talked about that 2.5-point line, Chapel, most teams in most instances are given 3 points for being at home. And so when you look at that line with Clemson being a 2.5-point underdog, the game being at Williams-Brice, you would imply that it's pretty much a pick'em game, you know, at least from the Vegas standpoint. But what's interesting is, man, it's been since 2018 since the home teams won. So home field advantage hadn't really been a factor. And I ask you the question, in a big game, a rivalry game with two fan bases as passionate as they are, why hadn't home field mattered?
It's fascinating. I love that stat. I think, if you go back even further, the last time Carolina beat Clemson in Columbia is even farther back because, there was that weird stretch where they played back-to-back games in Columbia because of COVID. So I think it might be, again, that 2013 game I mentioned or something like that. The last time that happened, that's a fascinating trend. I feel like that's one of the more underrated parts of this rivalry recently. It kind of speaks to the parity. I mean, the stadium's never going to be 50-50, but the proximity allows opposing fans to make, their presence known wherever you are.
Sure.
And I think it just speaks to how 50-50 this game is, regardless of, where both teams are at. I know Clemson had its run, but especially, you look at the last 4 years alone and just kind of the records in all those games, it is truly like a throw them out the window. UNC Duke basketball in the last 50 meetings, here's the teams, they've scored within 2 points of each other or something like that. The fact that Beamer's 2-2 against Clemson and both wins are on the road, I think just kind of speaks to the random nature of this game and how you do throw everything out the window. So, that's not my guess on what's going to happen this year. I'd imagine that home streak kind of gets going again. But it certainly gives you a little bit of hope if you're Clemson. It's not like you've lost 10 straight down there or something like that.
Right.
Chappell, if you haven't heard this audio, I'll play it for you. You probably have by now. What was your reaction to Dan Lanning ripping the SEC for saying we didn't get to play Chattanooga State this weekend? I know that he was taking a shot at the SEC, but I mean, come on, Clemson gets to have a little taste of that as well by playing Furman this weekend.
Yeah, I saw that. Chattanooga State doesn't exist. I don't think there's a Chattanooga. I don't believe there's a Chattanooga State. So even though his point stands, maybe he should work on his references and geography a little.
I think he was just trying to be a little extra disrespectful to the SEC.
I get it. I understand the frustration. I think a lot of times, the reason that happens for a lot of these SEC teams in Clemson is because they're ending the year with a big non-conference rivalry game. So I think, it's just a matter of timing. You could do that game earlier, but I think it makes some sense to kind of give yourself one of your free passes, your cupcakes at the end of the year, just given what's ahead of you. I know that doesn't really apply for Alabama because that's an in-conference game, but still a rivalry game. So, I mean, I get it. I also understand why, if there's nothing stopping you from scheduling that way, those schools that have that late rivalry game are probably going to do that. But I understand his frustration. I mean, I think every league has its scheduling quirks, and it certainly was a kind of boring week of football. But I guess the payoff is a really fun week this week starting Friday. But I can certainly see where he's coming from. But unless there's anything stopping those teams from doing it, I think it's going to keep on happening.
Chappell, I asked you why the home team as of late hasn't been the dominant team. Now I'm going to ask you why there hasn't been year in and year out, back and forth parity. When you look at what I'm asking here, South Carolina won in 2022. Clemson won in 2023. South Carolina won in 2024. It's back and forth, right? The last time you had back and forth like that was 1992. South Carolina won in 92. Clemson won in 93. South Carolina won in 94. Clemson won in 95. South Carolina won in 96. And then you had Clemson on a 4-game tear. South Carolina won once. South Carolina 2 years later went on a 5-game tear. Clemson goes on a 7-game streak, right? So I'm asking you the question, with two teams as close as they are, and we know that Clemson's run, in those 7 wins included some national championships in there as well, but why isn't this rivalry more back and forth in your mind?
Yeah, just all the stats in this one just don't make any sense. Historically, you compare them to all the other ones. I mean, I guess, Michigan and Ohio State is kind of in that spot too, where Ohio State's been good a few years and it just hasn't worked out. I don't know. I mean, I think those things can stack up on you. I think momentum is so easily seized in a game like this. Because again, most of the players are in-state guys. The coaches know what's going on. The fans don't like each other. Every big play is the biggest crowd pop you've ever heard. I mean, I think that is kind of just coincidence and luck. If you had a really good South Carolina run, legitimately the best run they've had in their program's history, historically, and the same for Clemson. So I think the fact that those two just happened to, occur back to back is kind of a funny, 12-year history that has led to that crazy. I mean, to go 5 straight for one side and 7 straight for another side, I bet if you compare that to all these other long-running rivalries, there's very few instances of that. Like, I doubt that there's a Bama-Auburn comparison for something like that. So I think part of it is just funny 21st century history, but just the fact that these games can get out of hand really quickly. I know during that long South Carolina streak, Dabo loves to talk about how Clemson's turnovers in that series specifically would just kill them game after game. So I think stuff like that can kind of add up over time. But yeah, more fun with numbers. This one kind of defies all logic, which is why I love it so much.
Chappell, I know there's a lot of recruits that are going to be on the sidelines for this game that both Clemson and South Carolina are going after. Do you have a sense of anybody specifically who amongst them maybe is placing a little extra meaning on this game?
I haven't been keeping up with it too much. I know that Clemson is pretty low on in-state recruits in its class another year, which has kind of been a trend recently. You know, they have Polo Anderson from Dorman, who's kind of expressed his recommitment to Clemson. Not recommitment, but just, you know, his the solidity of his commitment with Clemson despite the rough season. You know, I've always felt like Clemson should get a few more in-state dudes, you know, and they end up like flipping a guy late in the cycle sometimes, but I think the Gamecocks do a good job of really recruiting statewide. You know, I know part of that is Clemson has a national reach, but I think there's a lot of good players in the state. So I haven't really looked at how their 2027 classes are shaping up. I know they're probably roughly within the same range for this year's like composite class ranks. The portal has just messed all this up. Like I'm so more aware of who's entering the portal than high school commitments, especially once we get into the fall. But I don't know. I mean, I think these games do matter for stuff like that. A lot of these recruits grow up in one family or the other where it's all Clemson or it's all South Carolina. So stuff like that can kind of sway people's decisions as well. But yeah, it's always a fun one from a recruiting perspective. I wish they went head to head on more guys so there could be more like funny recruiting battles and stories like that. But I feel like that's kind of not where Clemson is right now with pursuing like a heavy in-state class, and maybe doing that a little bit more will help them. I don't know.
Chappell Fowler, the state newspaper, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. Chappell, both programs have had a tough 2025 season. In your mind, does this game Saturday shift the pendulum to where more guys were to get fired, or to where one staff, whoever does win this game, maybe this guy's seat is a little cooler because they ultimately beat their rival?
I mean, I could see it. You know, I think the winner of this game goes into the offseason with it's a lot easier to, you know, drum up interest on your talking season tour in the spring when you go around to Charleston and Greenville and here and there and ask for money from the Gamecock Club or IPTE or whatever. You know, I don't particularly think either. I mean, I don't think that was on the hot seat at all this season specifically. I don't think that for Beamer either. You know, I do think Clemson is going to have some notable staff change and roster turnover this season. I don't think that the result of this game is really going to dictate that. I think the proof is kind of in the pudding with that stuff, with how they started this season and the fact that they were 3-5 and just some of the same mistakes and issues and critical turnovers and, you know, questionable play calls and all this stuff, personnel that we've seen from them this year. You know, Jordan could probably speak more to that on South Carolina's side. I know they've already made some changes, but I think this one offers some offseason momentum. But I think both programs, both administrations, they probably have a pretty good idea going into this game already of, you know, what we need to do to turn this thing around in 2026. So I think this is, you know, this will get them some extra money maybe down the line and less fan gripes, but I think they probably have their plans mostly in place already.
Chappell, that statement that Dabo made last week saying that he essentially has no plans to cut players that are on this roster to make more room for NIL guys or what portal guys or whatever that may be. Do you think that is something that he's going to sort of let naturally phase out and allow himself some more flexibility and some more roster spots? I know you don't want to cut a guy who's already on roster, on campus, doing the right things. But in the future, could you see him maybe taking taking a guy or two less per season to kind of have that happen naturally rather than cutting guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that is such an underrated part of Clemson's roster construction and just kind of what you think about when you think about the space for portal guys and, you know, roster flexibility and all these things. I think an important part of it to note is like the 105-man roster era. You do kind of have to prioritize and keep some guys around who maybe aren't expecting to start and play starter snaps because you kind of need that depth. Like a lot of Clemson has players on its 105-man scholarship roster right now that are essentially functioning as walk-ons in as many words. So that is part of it. But like, I think, if you want to stick by that, and Dabo has stuck by that his entire career, that's admirable. My personal opinion is it's not exactly the way to run a football program in 2025 when a lot of people, a lot of your competitors are doing it differently. I think there's probably some wiggle room in what he said there and what can actually happen. Like, you can say, oh, I'm not going to cut a guy, but it's not, out of the question that they might, sit down with a number of guys who are just not playing at all and say, hey, like, you can stay here, but the path to playing time is not there. We'll help you go somewhere else. That happens all the time too. Like, it's less cutting guys. You don't have to be ruthless about it. You can kind of take people, level with them. I mean, just look at the snap counts on Clemson's roster right now. Some of the guys that just aren't playing at all. Like, I think of Kylan Griffin as a safety who's like barely played the last few games. And he's a 3 or 4 year graduate. So Dabo's big on that part too, like till graduation, do his part. Well, here's a guy who's a graduate that has remaining eligibility. And I think it would make a ton of sense for both sides if that guy moves on and goes somewhere else where he can play. So I think stuff like that can happen. It doesn't have to be really cruel, cold-hearted, we're cutting you, get out of here, stuff like that. I think you can kind of marry the two concepts together. My opinion is they need to do that with a number of guys, but we'll see if that happens.
Chappell, my last question for you. What is your biggest concern if you're a Clemson fan about Saturday's matchup?
Lenoris Sellers, and Lenoris Sellers. I wrote this
again, though. We saw that movie already, though, right?
The only guy on Clemson's defense last year who could tackle that guy consistently was Sammy Brown, and he was sitting his butt on the bench most of the second half, which is, again, one of the craziest and most inexplicable coaching and personnel decisions I've ever seen by Wes Goodwin. And I think probably added to the fact that why he went out the door.
Correct.
Clemson basically had one guy who could slow down Sellers, and somehow he's not playing in the second half in the fourth quarter. So I think just the way that he moved last year, this is basically the same defense in a lot of ways. It's the same star defensive line. It's the same linebackers. None of those guys could get him on the ground. And I know they've had sack issues, and I know that's part of it. And he has been, way down with his passing stats this year. But I think as long as he is healthy and running around, that's got to be Clemson's biggest concern, because in one matchup against him, they really just failed spectacularly, and he was best player on the field, untouchable, and the reason they won last year. So until he turns his ankle or something, I think he gives them a really good shot against Clemson.
Well, Chappell, I don't have to tell you that football players like to eat. If you've ever seen them in the mess hall, they will pile a ton of food up on their plate. I just wonder, like us mere mortals, we chow down on a bunch of turkey and gravy and stuffing, and we feel a little heavy for a couple of days. Is Dabo, number one, is he letting these guys go home for Thanksgiving, those who are close enough to go home? Is he placing any kind of a dietary restriction like, hey, guys, don't be loading up on the yams before South Carolina. We need you light. We need you fast.
It's funny. I was actually thinking about that earlier this week. I was like, how does this work, especially for – every team plays on Saturday, sure, but, especially for these rivalry games, they're so big, I might ask him that, Tuesday or Wednesday, just out of interest. I think it's an interesting point, and you wonder what do they do? I know that in years past, I'm trying to think back. I want to say, last year when Clemson was at home hosting South Carolina, I think a number of players had their families just come up a few days early and maybe do a more reduced Thanksgiving or just a smaller Thanksgiving at their apartments or at their houses and stuff like that. I remember TJ Parker talking about what he was going to cook. I wonder how much it changes for road game stuff. I think, they won't bust down to Columbia until Friday. So Thursday's an open day. I'm sure they'll probably stay close to campus, probably on campus that whole time. They'll have walkthroughs and stuff and whatever. But yeah, I may ask him that, because I know they have a really well-regarded team nutritionist that Dabo talks about all the time. So I wonder what the tips are. It'd be cool to see that sheet. We could probably use that too. So we're not as slow in our turkey bowls and walking around the press box on Saturday. I know I can use that. So,
Chappell, I want you to ask Dabo about tryptophan, because that's what's in turkey, right? That makes you tired.
I thought you could find Osterine in turkey.
No. I don't believe so. Maybe
you can find Osterine in anything.
Maybe not this year's turkey. Maybe in Athens you can. I'm going to be on the edge of my seat tomorrow waiting for that question. Just by the way, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate you, Chappell.
Thank you guys so much. It was great to be on.
Chappell Fowler, the state newspaper. Always the best. Always appreciate him joining us on the Fan Upstate. Good stuff there. And just make sure you don't eat too much. You don't want to be sluggish on Saturday and Friday too, Diesel.
A lot rides on this game. When we come back, Cole, let's do our whip around. Can't be sluggish for that either. Our whip around the sports world Daily Wire is next. So much happening in the sports world over the weekend, Cole. We get to it all rapid fire in our Daily Wires.
Buzz.
The buzz is that Cal has fired Justin Wilcox, their head football coach. He went 48-55 over 9 seasons with the Golden Bears.
Do you even know that Cal had a football team? Did you know that?
The only reason I knew that is because their investment firm is suddenly trying to buy into the Big Ten.
I was going to say, Cal's irrelevant.
Yeah.
The only reason we talk about them is, unfortunately, because of conference realignment, right?
Otherwise, there's no reason to talk about him here on the East Coast.
Did we even talk to Justin Wilcox at ACC kickoff?
No.
I don't even remember seeing
there that
guy.
day? Yeah.
I don't know.
This is a sad story, Cole. The search continues for missing 46-year-old Union High School football coach. That's Union High School in Appalachia, Virginia, not here locally. Travis Turner. His team is undefeated on the season. State police were headed to his house Thursday of last week as part of an ongoing investigation, but he wasn't there. Police say that he was last seen wearing gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt, and glasses walking into the woods near his house.
That is awful. That
Yeah.
is. We had something like this locally happen like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I hate hearing that.
And despite the fact that he didn't coach on Friday night, they won. And he and his team is still in the playoffs.
That's so bad.
Just hoping for the best possible outcome there. Over the weekend, UAB announced an assault inside of its football operations center. Offensive lineman Daniel Mency stabbed 2 defensive linemen at breakfast. The incident allegedly stemmed from a fight that took place at practice the day before. At least one of the victims was taken away in an ambulance. Clemson knocked off 2 straight undefeated teams in men's basketball over the weekend in Charleston at the Shriners Children's Charleston Classic. They beat then undefeated West Virginia 70-68 on Friday, and then followed that up with an overtime win over undefeated Georgia 97-94. The Tigers improved to 6-1 on the season.
Got it done, man. That was a little dicey
Yeah.
for a little bit yesterday. And when it went to overtime, I didn't really have a good feeling about it. But the Tigers, hey, they find a way to do it. That's a big win.
Yeah, South Carolina not as lucky over the weekend. They fell to Northwestern by 2, 79-77. Gamecocks still off to a good start, though. They are 4-2 on the young season. Heads up to you TOLO'S who make your picks in the Upset Picks Challenge. Because of the shortened week, we will start the Upset Picks Challenge tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll then ask that everybody get their picks in tomorrow and Wednesday.
Go.
We will leave the text line open while we're gone, and we will go back and try to grab those. But again, we ask you that you try to get them in tomorrow and Wednesday during the show.
Diesel, I expect tomorrow to be wild with upset pick entries. We're opening a day early.
Yeah.
You TOLO'S aren't going to be texting your upset pick on Thursday and Friday. You're going to be the food coma.
Yeah.
So let's do it tomorrow.
And
I was going to say, let's do I had audio blitz at 6 o'clock. We might get to some upset pick early lanes today at 6 o'clock.
All right. And we'll see how many TOLO'S take that Tuesday night action. How many of you are really going to pick those
And
games?
there's Thanksgiving and Black Friday.
Oh,
I mean, there's
so much football.
Yeah, I love it,
so
man.
much ball. Yesterday, Georgia offensive lineman Nair Daniels was arrested on 4 felony charges and 9 misdemeanor charges. The charges include fleeing police and 2 counts of second-degree child cruelty. That's tough, man.
That is.
Something we'd all had kind of predicted here. Western Carolina quarterback Taron Jennings, who had a streak of 50 consecutive completed passes this season, 46 in one game and 4 in another, has announced his intention to enter the transfer portal.
Shocker.
Yeah. Dak Prescott has moved past Tony Romo as the Cowboys' all-time leading passer. He did so in yesterday's 24-21 come-from-behind victory over the Eagles. 28 unanswered points and 354 yards of passing for Dak.
Man, those Eagle fans are quiet today. Where are they at? They're usually all over the text line. I don't know where they are, but I'd love to talk to them.
2 more quick ones for you. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor says he anticipates that Joe Burrow will play on Thanksgiving against Baltimore. And finally, disgraced former Baylor head football coach Art Briles, who was fired in 2016 surrounding some sexual assault scandal, has been hired as a head coach once again by Division II Eastern New Mexico.
Wow.
So he's back on the sidelines.
Dewey says, that's a travesty. Y'all want be here. Thursday and Friday. Well, do we? It's company holidays, so we're not going to show up.
We're not
on
allowed in the
company
building.
That's right.
They don't even unlock the doors on Thursday and Friday.
But because we're not on the air, let's get into it next, Diesel. Let's dive in. The opening line favors the Gamecocks by 2.5. I also asked the question earlier on our Facebook page today: if Mike Furrey in South Carolina were to pull this off, should Shane Beamer retain and promote Mike Furrey to the permanent OC? Let's dive into our first thoughts. And TOLO'S, your first thoughts on Clemson, South Carolina next. South Carolina fans, I want to hear from you. Clemson fans, I want you to sit there and shut up and not say a single word. I'm kidding. I want to hear from you as well. But the main question as we take a deep dive into Clemson, South Carolina rivalry week, baby, the main question, I posted it on our Facebook page. We'll get to some of those comments in just a second. But Diesel, TOLO'S, if South Carolina wins the game on Saturday, and they look competent on the offensive side of the football, the question becomes, should Shane Beamer retain and promote Mike Furrey as offensive coordinator, or do you feel like Shane Beamer still needs to go outside of the program and make a splash hire from someone who has been calling plays, who is a proven coordinator? That is the question we lead our number 2 with. We have Grayson Mann of TigerNet.com coming up in the very next segment. We'll ask him what Clemson fans are burning to ask. If you want to get a question in for Grayson, you can do so. He's coming up at 4:22. But Diesel, Shane Beamer a couple of weeks ago fired Mike Shula. And now it's up to Shane Beamer once this offseason begins, which, by the way, begins very soon for the Gamecocks. It's up to him to find the next play caller. Do you believe that Mike Furrey, if he wins Saturday and the offense looks competent, do you believe Mike Furrey might be the next OC?
Might, but it's an
What's your name?
extremely thin chance for him to be. Dewey, by the way, already says that Mike Furrey should be fired.
Already.
I mean, Mike Furrey
he hadn't even been hired.
a pretty good game. Your mic's not on. Mike Furrey did call a really good game against an inferior opponent in Coastal this past week, and scoring. That was a beautiful pitch and catch there from Lenoris to Jaden Sellers, and it's an incredible 75-yard run to get the score on the opening drive. But against a competent defense, that's not going for 75 and a touchdown. It's just simply not. So Mike Furrey, I would say, interview him, give him an opportunity to get the job, but you can't just you cannot just say, oh, we're going to promote from in-house. Isn't it great?
I just wonder how much. I'm not saying you have to promote from within. I'm not saying he's the automatic hire. I'm just saying, what if the offense looks really good? What if the offense looks really good? Do you not have to think, okay, maybe Mike Furrey could elevate Lenoris Sellers? Maybe Mike Furrey could get this offense to a place where it needs to be. That's the question. TOLO'S, want to hear from you at 844-326-3663. Let's go to the phone lines where Kev starts us off again at 844-FAN-PHONE. Kev, your first thoughts on Clemson, South Carolina this weekend?
Man, I feel like Sellers and them boys finna get right on them boys this weekend, man.
You think so?
Like, Clemson's had their little run, but we know what Clemson. I mean, don't get me wrong, they've looked a lot better, but you're still going against ACC. Like, I'm an ACC guy. My Tar Heels is my boys, but I just feel like South Carolina's a little bit more physical than what they've been than the team Clemson has played in the last few weeks. So I feel like it's time for them to roll out and go out there and put up another big game by Sellers and the rest of them.
Got a score prediction?
I feel like they come out hot like they did. And I know it was Coastal, but at the same time, they was on a mission this past weekend. So I'm going to say 38-21 South Carolina.
Wow, 38 points by South Carolina. That's a lot of points, Kev.
Yeah, hey, they can go score, man. They like when you go out and play teams like Texas and how they came out that week. And I know they had a lot of things to go their way that first half.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the offense they put up last year, they got a lot of people back. I know they're missing the running back that they had and Sanders, but at the same time, I feel like them boys can come out and exploit Clemson and what they got going on. I feel like they need to spend some money on a coordinator too. Like,
okay,
you need a guru. You need a nerd that just sit and draw up plays and really know how to use Sellers at his best advantage.
Yeah,
because ball coach, he can't do that. He don't know that style. Like
Beamer,
he can call plays. They're like, if you're offensive coordinator, you can call plays because that's what you're supposed to do. But to really use somebody's talent and use that against and make that make his legs last. Once he uses legs, once you forget about his legs, Now he's got 4 carries for 90 yards.
Sure.
It's that easy. But you got to get him doing something else and that he likes and that him and offense coordinator can get along doing.
I like it. I
Good
like
call.
it. Thanks, Kev.
Thanks, Kev. Question, Cole. If Mike Furrey can convince Lenoris Sellers to stay for another year, I'd say give him the job. Or at least put his resume on the top of the stack, right?
Yeah.
If that's what you can bring to the table. Hey, I'm Mike Furrey. I've given you 3 games, and we've looked really good against quality competition in 2 of those games. Again, I'm not counting the Coastal. I'm not saying you can hang your resume on that. But if you can say I gave you 3 really good games at the end of the season, because Mike was calling plays for the A&M game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll give him credit for that. Granted, the defense did a lot of work there too. And you can say, and I've already gotten a commitment from Lenoris Sellers to come back. I'd say, man, it's really hard to say, sorry, Mike, we appreciate you. Here's your gold watch. Wish you the best of luck.
So here's where I am on Mike Furrey in South Carolina. I believe, Diesel and TOLO'S, that Mike Furrey is in an incredible, unfair position. I do. I believe that Mike Furrey today is in a very unfair position. What do I mean by that? When I say that I believe he is in an unfair position, Diesel, here's what I mean. I don't believe Shane Beamer can afford to promote from within right now. I don't believe Shane Beamer can afford just to promote whoever at the current moment. I believe there's a little bit of pressure or a lot of bit of pressure on Shane Beamer to get this hire right. I believe that this could be Shane Beamer's last and final hire with hiring this next OC if things don't go right. So how do I tie that in? What do I mean, Diesel? What do I mean when I say I don't believe Mike Furrey's in a fair spot, in a fair position? It's nothing against Mike. It's nothing against Mike. Mike Furrey might be an incredible play caller. He might be. He might go somewhere else and be a really good play caller. And one day you might regret not hiring Mike Furrey. But I don't believe that they're in the spot where they can hire Mike Furrey, because I believe there's so much pressure on Shane Beamer to get this next hire right. He has to go outside. He has to get someone who's proven. He has to get someone who can bring Lenoris Sellers back, hopefully, and get this offense to look like a college-style offense that goes out, scores points, lights up the scoreboard, and I don't want to hear this NFL crap. So, to answer my own question, I love Mike Furrey. I do. I love Mike Furrey. I think he's a really good coach. I just don't know that he's in the most fair position right now, because I believe Shane Beamer's got to get this next hire right.
Considering where Shane Beamer is as a head coach, and everything you just said is true on the hot seat, South Carolina cannot afford to be the type of program that is developing offensive coordinator talent.
Not right now.
They cannot be that program. They have to be the program that's bringing in proven, creative minds. Take a guy that is elite at a G5 program or an FCS program. Doesn't matter. If you're a creative mind, you're a creative mind.
Yeah.
Take that guy and give him a sudden upgrade in talent that you've got at South Carolina that you'd never have at a Western Carolina or a Mercer or wherever it may be. Heck, bring in a guy that's already been a head coach. I'm super high on Mike Jacobs, the head coach at Mercer. He's an offensive guy. Why wouldn't you make that jump, Cole, from being a SoCon head coach to an SEC coordinator? That's a phenomenal job upgrade. And then, hey, you parlay that a couple of years down the road into being a G5 or maybe a Power 4 head coach somewhere. I think that's a phenomenal career path for a guy like Mike.
So here's my problem with that. I don't think Shane Beamer can afford to go get an offensive coordinator from Mercer. I don't believe he can afford. I just simply don't believe he can afford to right now. This hire has to be the right one, because if not, Beamer is done.
But aren't you pigeonholing yourself into another Mike Shula if you say, well, we will restrict our coaching candidates to What exactly? Guys who have been Power 4 coordinators before?
Yeah.
Aren't those guys all already locked up or getting head coaching opportunities?
Well, I'm going to give them a check, and I'm going to give them a blank check. I'm just saying, like, you go look at and again, it goes back to my point about Mike Furrey. I believe it's just so unfair and so unfortunate for Mike Furrey to be in the position that he's in, because guess what? Mike Furrey might be a better coordinator than a lot of these guys and options that are out there. Yeah. He might be. And I believe, Diesel, if this were 2 or 3 years ago, Shane Beamer in 2021, Diesel, could afford to hire Mike Furrey. Shane Beamer in 2022 could afford to hire Mike Furrey. I don't believe Shane Beamer in 2025 can afford to hire Mike Furrey because of the pressure that I believe is on Shane Beamer to make sure he gets this hire right. Because ultimately, if he hires Mike Furrey and next year goes south, they're both done. The staff's done. There's going to be a lot of changes. So I hate it for Mike. I love him. I think he's a great coach and an even better person, but I don't know that Beamer hires him.
The texters are all over this. TOLO'S 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. Texter says lame duck coaches can't usually make splash hires. You're talking about making a splash offensive coordinator hire. I'm talking about hiring, and to this point, I don't believe Shane Beamer could hire a splash OC, but I think Shane Beamer could hire a head coach that calls plays at a highly successful group of 5 or FCS level school, bring him in. That's a guy that's putting another head coach on your staff. Don't all these coaches want to do that? They all want to bring in head coaches because it takes just a little bit off their plate. Every time you hire a head coach, even if they weren't phenomenal as a head coach where they were before, you're hiring a guy who knows how to manage people. So that's one less person you have to manage as a head coach if you're Shane Beamer. So I think they could absolutely, I mean, I without looking it up, I'll bet you Jacobs down at Mercer's making maybe $500K.
If that.
So you're telling me you couldn't offer him $750,000 to $1 million and say, hey, come on over to Columbia and ply your trade here. We'll make a head coach out of you in 3 years. Hurricane Jeff says Chip Kelly is available, as does Mark L.O. Ducks, as does another texter. 3 in a row. Just boom, boom, boom. What about hiring Chip Kelly?
Well, let me get this text from the 978, and then I'll comment on Chip Kelly. Shane Beamer from the 978 says Shane Beamer will be on the hot seat in 2026. He better, all caps, better hire a solid OC, not one on the current staff. Michael Burton on the YouTube stream says he has to go outside for this hire. His 2026 season depends on it. If we go out and score 50 on Clemson, then I think they will think about Furrey. And again, I think most Gamecock fans are on the same page here. This hire is so important. It's nothing against Furrey. I just find it really intriguing to see, going back to that question that I asked Chapel Fowler in the first hour, does the result of Saturday change Beamer's mind on OC? Now, let me get to Chip Kelly. I had Chip Kelly slated in for the 445 segment. I'll get to it now. I'll do something different at 445. I had on the rundown. For 445, I literally typed in, Chip Kelly should have stayed in Columbus. And about a month ago, Diesel, I told a friend of mine, I think the dumbest thing in the world was Chip Kelly leaving Ohio State to go to the Raiders. And I know pride's a dangerous thing, right? But he goes to Las Vegas. He wins a national championship, goes to Las Vegas, and now he's been fired. Chip Kelly has been fired from the Raiders. So my first point to the whole Chip Kelly conversation, he's an idiot for leaving Ohio State in the first place. Yeah. He'd probably be playing for another national championship this year, number one. Number two, does Shane Beamer hire him? I don't know, but I would imagine that he at least has a conversation with him, right?
Why leave an elite level job? Tippy top. You're right there on the mountaintop. You might not have been the first one to stand there and plant the flag, but you're carrying the bags right behind him. You're right there. Why leave Ohio State?
It's stupid.
To go to a dumpster fire.
Makes no sense.
Like L.A.
Yeah.
Unless there was just more money involved, unless he thought, hey, if I go there maybe they can rehab my image more than Ohio State can. I don't understand it. If you were going to rank those jobs, it's clearly Ohio State OC, South Carolina OC, then the Las Vegas Raiders OC.
I would tell you this. I understand that some coaches, some people just have a love for the NFL, that they have to be drawn back to it. I get that. But, man, situation matters. And I agree with you. I think it was the stupidest move in the world for Chip Kelly to go to the Vegas Raiders when he was already, one of the best offensive coordinators at the best job in the country, right? Now, does Shane Beamer hire? I don't know if Shane Beamer hires Chip Kelly. I'll throw a wild one at you. What if Shane Beamer calls Garrett Riley and says, look, I know I couldn't get you the first time around. You went to Clemson. Can you imagine the fan explosion, Diesel, if Garrett Riley were to leave Clemson and go to South Carolina?
That's like showing up at a family reunion with the girl that was dating your cousin.
Be awkward.
Last year.
Be kind of awkward.
That'd be awkward. But it'd be fun for us. It'd be real fun for us.
So that's where I land on the whole Furrey conversation. I love the guy. I think a lot of Mike Furrey, Diesel, as a coach. Yeah. I think he's an even better person. And I just say that because I know him personally. I talked to him on Friday. I love Mike Furrey. I really do. But I think also Mike Furrey is in a very unfair position that I think ultimately Beamer will go on the outside.
I don't think that any job at this level should be doled out based on tenure versus based on being next man up, based on I was here when we accomplished this. No, there is far, far, far too much on the line to just hand it to the next guy, to remove the assistant tag off of his business card and just make him the full-fledged right?
Sure.
You can't have that be the way you do things. That is small-time thinking. Again, I think Mike Furrey deserves a shot. I think he deserves an interview. And if he blows Shane Beamer's doors off, then hire the guy.
That's right.
Absolutely hire the guy, but you cannot put him number one on the depth chart right now.
But what happens Saturday will matter, man. I'm telling you, real quick before we run to a break, the spread when this game Sunday, late Saturday night, Diesel, when the spread came out, the opening line favored the Gamecocks by 2.5 points. And again, essentially this is a pick'em game because South Carolina's getting 3 points for being at home. So Vegas really doesn't have a pulse on what side to lean on. I think you might see some movement, though, throughout the week, depending on where some money comes in on it. But right now it's at 2.5. If you had to lay your hard-earned money, would you be comfortable laying 2.5 with the Gamecocks right now? Where do you stand on that opening line?
God, I mean, seeing how well South Carolina can play when everything's going well, even though it's against an inferior opponent like Coastal, like it feels like if South Carolina gets
the talent's there,
75% of that production or 50% of that production, they have a very, very good chance of winning this game against Clemson. I'd be comfortable laying the 2.5.
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if it will, but I do think it will be very interesting to see if the line moves. Obviously, injuries will, play a big part in line movement. I don't expect there to be. The injury reports do come out on Thursday, so we'll see. But I think it's interesting that South Carolina is favored by 2.5. Essentially meaning Vegas has this one at a pick'em. But it's going to be interesting to see.
TOLO'S, I promise you, we're not trying to talk nothing but Clemson all day. It's just the way that it worked out being a short week, and we appreciate Chapel Fowler jumping in with us earlier at his non-normal time. Jack Veltri going to join us to talk South Carolina Gamecocks on the show tomorrow. But coming up in the very next segment, we'll stay right there with Clemson with Grayson Mann of TigerNet next on the Fan Upstate.
826-3663. That's 844-FAN-PHONE. This is Wire to Wire with Cole, Bryson, and Diesel on the Fan Upstate.
It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson to stay right here with the Palmetto rivalry, the South Carolina Clemson game, which, Grayson, we have a policy around here. We say it the order that the most recent winner gets to go first. So it is the South Carolina Clemson game, no matter how you may feel about it. Let's start right there. Big game, obviously, this weekend for both of these teams. I'm not sure you could overstate how much it means to both of these two fan bases. I've always argued that South Carolina and Clemson fans hate each other so much because they're exactly the same, like they're flip sides of the same coin. Would you say that is accurate, Grayson?
I would say their head coaches too are very similar, and I think that makes fans just even more furious. And before we get started, guys, I just want to applaud Cole's Cowboys for a big win yesterday. That was
how about
awesome.
it, man? Got to make things interesting.
They're going to beat the Chiefs on Thursday too. Just to
They'll
let
beat
you
the
know.
Chiefs on Thursday, and then we're going to win 5 of the next 6 and make the playoffs at 10-6-1, and then going to reel off 3 in a row and win the Super Bowl is what they're going to do, Grayson. Didn't you know that?
Oh, man. Let's go, man. It's here. It's your time.
You can always dream. You know, it's interesting. You did mention that to Diesel's question about both head coaches being similar. Dabo Swinney and Shane Beamer, they've been seen at this game, before the game starts and even after the game, chatting it up. They are friends. They are, to your point, very similar in how they coach, their approach, what their priorities are off the field. Two similar guys, though. But when you talk about what they've done, both programs in 2025 have been in a rough patch. When you look at these two coaches, when you look at what's going to happen on Saturday, do you feel that this game, this rivalry game, still has the importance to where, you look at a lot of rivalry games, Grayson. I mean, a couple of years ago before Ryan Day won the national championship, Ryan Day was going to be fired because he couldn't beat Michigan. Do you feel like this rivalry game still has those type of implications?
I mean, yeah, if you look at it last year, in all honesty, it should have been the winner should have made the playoffs. And South Carolina and Clemson, in that vacuum that we had for a few hours after the Gamecocks took down Clemson on their home turf, it looked like Clemson's playoff hopes were done because there was no real option to get to Charlotte. The at-large bid was you win and you're in. And South Carolina came into your doorstep on your lawn and swooped it from you. So there's still that story. There's still that passion to this. And I think, honestly, guys, this game's much more important this year because both seasons have gone pretty poorly. And a win can do so much for a fan base where South Carolina, they're not going to be going bowling, but imagine what a Clemson win could do for that fan base for several months. And Shane Beamer, who's had a tough season after nearly making the playoffs last year, and for Clemson to ride what would be a 4-game win streak heading into bowl season and just sort of the turnaround that they've been able to sustain as of late. Not their best football, but wins are wins in a season where those have come pretty far and few between. So I would argue it's very important on Saturday. I know maybe nationally there's not as much interest, but I'm sure within the state, fans will be ready for noon on Saturday.
Grayson, this is a little premature to ask this question, but I wanted to put it out there just so it doesn't fly away out of my head. I wonder how many of these Clemson players are likely to stick around for bowl games. We've seen how many guys choose to go get ready for the combine, and you would hope that the Clemson culture would mean almost all of them stick around, but who knows after a weird season like this. So not asking you that question yet, but I do want to put that in the back of your mind. I want to ask you about injuries going into this South Carolina game. I know a guy or two that was expected to play a big role against South Carolina went down this past week. What's the absolute latest?
Yeah, Jaheim Lawson, Olsen, Pat Henry, as far as Sweeney has told us last night, they're both out for the season. With different injuries. Olsen, Pat Henry's came a little bit earlier in the first quarter. 4th down conversion, hit Klubnik. Klubnik hit him in stride and he got his leg caught up under him from a Furman tackler. And then Jaheim Lawson's situation, very frustrating from the tone of what we've seen from the fan base, is a guy that probably shouldn't have been out there in the third quarter with the second string team. And Lawson has got an ankle injury that's going to require surgery, and he's also going to miss time. And for a guy that's been one of your better defenders this year, I'd argue he's been better than the transfer acquisition than Helt and better than TJ Parker for a large part of this year. He's out against the Gamecocks. So in a game that I think South Carolina talent-wise, I think they have a slight edge over Clemson, especially with some injuries to the offensive line. That's trouble on all fronts.
Grayson, this South Carolina team is a little bit different in areas. Obviously, the running back situation is not as good as it was last year, not as consistent with what they had in Rocket Sanders, but you are going against some of the same receivers, and you are going against the same quarterback, a quarterback that beat you in the fourth quarter. I said multiple times last year that I felt like Clemson had the better team last year, but South Carolina had the better player, and that better player made some key plays down the stretch, right, that won them that game. Do you believe Clemson can game plan for this game and have an advantage in a way where they can subdue Lenora Sellers just simply because they've tasted, they've seen, they played the guy last year?
They've got a game plan prep for him, and I think if you're Tom Allen, you turn on that fourth quarter tape of Lenore Sellers, and this is what we don't need to do against a quarterback of his talent. And you saw it last year in that game, Cole, is Clemson had bottled it up for really that's majority part of the first quarter. He had the big scramble in the beginning, and then was really held in check until that fourth quarter. And largely part of that is due to Sammy Brown not being on the field and being that counter speed-wise as a spy. So I'd expect Allen to hone in on that and use Brown's ability to go sideline to sideline and say, you're getting Sellers. This is your task all afternoon. And we'll see if that pans out. But Clemson has the experience. It's not like a conference schedule where maybe an SEC team didn't face Sellers last year and you're having to prep based off of film, not experience. This defense, who brought back a lot of starters, they've played this guy before. They've been burned by this guy before. And maybe that plays into Clemson's favor that they've seen it and they know exactly what he's capable of.
Grayson, I know the sample size on this question is extremely small, but performance on the field has to matter. And on Saturday, we saw Chris Denson look really, really good in limited action. I get that he hasn't been on the field a lot. He looked more comfortable than Vizina. He looked more comfortable than Trent Pierman. Going into the offseason, are we talking about a real quarterback battle where a redshirt freshman could be jumping a guy like Christopher Vizina that's been on this roster for a couple of years?
Diesel, I've held the opinion that Clemson's starter for 2026 isn't currently on this roster. I do think that the portal will be the move that this staff ultimately ends up making. If not that, then probably Vizina. I think that Clemson's game plan for Denson is more of a 2027 outlook where as a passer still isn't refined, and that's sort of the groundwork that Clemson's had to do in terms of his development is we got to get this kid to be able to make those deep reads, intermediate throws, sort of make him more of a complete quarterback. There's no doubt that this kid's a complete athlete, and I think more and more there should be packages for him to come in and make plays because I know that it's the Furman backups, and I got a lot of pushback for saying this, but there's some juice to that guy. And I think in a season that's lacked a lot of that juice at the quarterback spot, you like what you see from 15, even in a limited sample size, as you had pointed out. So I'm not sure maybe he's competing for that starting job, but I think it very much depends on Clemson's moves in the portal. I'd say he's got a stronger chance to compete if they don't utilize the portal for that position. But overall, I do think Clemson's answer is still not on this roster when it comes to their starter in 2026.
Grayson, that would be bold given the track record of Dabo Swinney and his usage of the portal. We know he dabbled in it last offseason, but it would be bold to bring in someone who touches the football every single play, right, offensively. Are you also going to go on the bold route that there will not only be a transfer portal quarterback in 2025, but maybe that transfer portal quarterback comes with a new offensive coordinator? Would you take that bold prediction?
It wouldn't shock me. I think that's the new trend that we're going to see. Oklahoma's said it with John Mateer and that Washington State offensive coordinator sort of coming in as a package deal. And you've seen what it did to the Sooners. And I think if Mateer hadn't been hurt, Oklahoma's probably a team with a bye right now going into the college football playoff, just the way they were playing and that portion of the season. And they're still going to make the playoffs if they can take care of business this Saturday, which is remarkable for Brent Venables, who has kind of spent the last several years building that program. But I do believe if Clemson were to take a quarterback out of the portal, that, I would say that you probably should bring that offensive coordinator with them, which it maybe limits your options, and it depends on who's the coordinator at Clemson. But I think we'll get our answer pretty soon following the Palmetto Bowl as to the vacancy or lack thereof at that position.
Before the bowl game?
I think that staff changes before the bowl game. Dabo Swinney's done this before. He brought in Matt Luke and Chris Rumpf before the bowl game. And I think that a precedent has been set there.
At Gray_man21 is where you can find and follow him on Twitter. Grayson, one thing I've never understood, why don't we see Dabo using the portal as a second crack at a guy that he thought really highly of, that he recruited pretty hard and ultimately just chose somewhere else? Maybe I'm thinking sort of needle in a haystack, because these guys are kind of scattering and going all over the place once they enter the transfer portal. But if it's somebody that Dabo had a high enough opinion of to recruit and to be locked in a battle with somebody, why don't we see him going after a second opportunity at players like that more often?
Yeah, and he did. In this portal cycle with Jeremiah Alexander, someone they came in second place for against Alabama, or it was Alabama, I think, early in that 24 class, and it just didn't work out with the Crimson Tide, and he had Clemson second. And so Swinney ducked back into the portal and said, let's do this again. And Alexander was an easy fit. So I think you're going to see more of that in certain instances. And I think it's an incident where you're going to see this across the country, where a lot of schools, they may have been in the top 3 or top 2, and they just keep an eye to see how things are going. So Alexander was precedent there in terms of the portal, and it wouldn't shock me if down the road, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, I'm not trying to, just because I haven't done my research on names in the portal yet. It's such a wild west, and so I'm just trying to get to South Carolina first and then sort of diving into those names. But it wouldn't shock me if a couple of those guys, that maybe 25 kids that Clemson was second for, they start to poke around again and say, we really liked you initially and you've grown a ton. Why not a change scenery here?
Grayson, you mentioned Clemson's defense and what they learned a season ago when they played Lenora Sellers. What do you think offensively they can utilize Saturday going against a South Carolina defense? Is pretty good, a battle-tested South Carolina defense. Do you expect wrinkles? Do you expect much of the same on Saturday? What's your forecast for this Clemson offense?
Yeah, it goes into what my main concern is with this offense, is that they're not able to run in between the tackles. And you saw that against Furman, which against an FCS squad compared to South Carolina's defensive line, that is going from maybe a minivan to a Ferrari in terms of quality. And so it's going to be a steep hill for Clemson to climb. So I would expect a lot of the responsibility to fall on Cade Klubnik's shoulders. And I would expect quick throws. I would expect screens to the outside. The inability to run the football. If they can find a way to do that, I think Clemson wins this game pretty handily, I would add, if they're able to be dynamic on offense. But if they're not, it becomes one of those games where, and keep in mind, Klubnik hasn't thrown a touchdown pass against South Carolina. They've really held this guy in check in these Palmetto Bowls, but that's probably just kind of the dictation of these games. It's been more lower scoring, and I would expect that on Saturday. And so when you enter a rock fight, does Clemson have a trick up their sleeve, or do they have something ready to go? And I think it would be a big game for these receivers. They got to step up and help out the quarterback.
Grayson, were you in Charleston yesterday for the Georgia Clemson basketball game?
I was not, but I was watching.
Okay, I was just curious. What might you have seen from Brad Brownell when it comes to kind of getting their head screwed back on right towards the end of that second half, where they went a little cold there for the last 3 minutes? It felt like Clemson could have walked away and won that game comfortably by 8 to 10 points, but ultimately they let Georgia stay in it by not scoring much at the end. And obviously once they got into overtime, the lid came off the basket and they were scoring again. So I was just curious what you might have seen or what you thought Brad Brownell might have said to them to wake them up.
Yeah, I think the shot selection was a little bit off in the second half. And so I agree with you. I think Clemson was a much better team when it came to the matchup against Georgia yesterday. And you let them hang around. And Georgia's offense is incredible. And you had that stretch there where you're able to kind of keep them in check. And Justin Porter came alive, multiple 3-point makes. You had Butta Johnson, who I've been a little bit disappointed with initially, came alive in this tournament. Dylan Hunter playing a lot more steady. It's a group, Diesel, that I think last year we had games where Ian Shefflin or Chase Hunter or Victor Locken, like your usual cast of characters, it just wasn't a collective effort in terms of positivity from them, and you weren't getting a lot. And all of a sudden, when your top guys weren't performing well, things fell apart. This year, it's a little different where they really have to come together, share the ball well. There's not a guy that's going to get you 20 every night, at least right now. And so you have to rely on this kind of collective bunch of really smart basketball, making the right shots. And you've seen them not really crumble under that weight. They've been able to stay in a lot of these games. Georgetown, that second half's probably their worst effort, and still they were able to kind of keep it competitive for a majority of that matchup. So came away impressed that weekend with this team. I think the potential's there. You just want to see a little bit more of it, and they're going to get a big test against Alabama and BYU here pretty soon.
Grayson, before we let you go, it's Monday. You've still got Tuesday and Wednesday. You'll hear from Dabo Sweeney tomorrow, and then you'll eat a lot of turkey on Thursday. You'll recover on Friday. But what is your gut telling you on this Monday of how this game plays out Saturday?
Cole, this is a game in my mind that I've been looking forward to for a variety of reasons, and my prediction seemingly changes with the temperature in South Carolina as consistently as it does around here. It's cold one day, it's warm the next. Right now, I'm leaning Clemson on momentum and just the way they've been able to stack wins and play a little bit better. I haven't been completely thrilled with it, and I see a South Carolina team that has kind of been the inverse, and I know the competition has been much more stark. I mean, Alabama and A&M, you hold that against Florida State and Louisville, it's not comparable at all. But there has been a formula with Carolina and why they've struggled this year. It's down to that second half. They haven't really been playing their best ball, as Clemson's kind of found a way to not shoot itself in the foot as much. So right now I lean Clemson, but the injuries to the offensive line really concern me, and I think there's a formula for both teams. It could really, I'm 50-50, and right now I'm sitting here like, it's tough. It's one of those more interesting games to try to dial into and study. Right now I lean Clemson, but man, it's tough. It's really tight.
Grayson, you're the best. Good luck to you on Thursday. Good luck to you maybe walking around on Friday, as we're all kind of going to be laid out in a star position on the ground, just letting our bodies digest and from eating all that food. But we appreciate you as always and look forward to talking to you again next time.
I got a tea time Friday, so I got to really recover.
Oh,
wow.
There you go.
Life's good if you're Grayson Mann.
Thanks, Grayson.
Grayson Mann, TigerNet.com. Diesel, you mentioned it an hour ago, but the Upset Picks Challenge opens a day early this week. We've got to look at some Upset Pick early leans next. Upset Picks Challenge opens one day earlier than normal. Why? Well, because Diesel and I are off the air on Thursday and Friday. I'm off Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You'll be here Wednesday, but the Upset Picks Challenge will open tomorrow at 4 o'clock, Diesel, which means the Tolos have to get them in a day early, and they're responsible for getting them in during the Thanksgiving break if they don't tomorrow or Wednesday, right?
That's right. You can still send them in while we're not here. I'll go back and I'll be checking the text line, but we really, 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 really want you to send them in while we're on the air, okay? Please send them in tomorrow or on Wednesday before 7 p.m. on Wednesday.
So with that being said, let's look, Diesel. Let's look at some early leans. And that also means Tom in Somerville should be happy because that means you can choose Maction games tomorrow night.
Yeah.
You've got 2 Maction games tomorrow.
Hey.
One while we're on the air at 4:30. This is a good one, by the way.
How bad is your conference when you're playing at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday?
A 3-8 Bowling Green versus a 0-11 UMass. And then at 7:30 tomorrow night, Western Michigan versus Eastern Michigan. Now, Thursday
game is interesting.
That one is, and I think Thursday's game is really interesting as well.
Tomorrow's game is interesting. The Western Michigan versus Eastern Michigan. Number one, it's a rivalry game. We know that, right? Eastern Michigan is the home team. They've won 2 in a row, and they're consistently scoring 3 touchdowns a game. So that's what I kind of like about that one. You know, not knowing a ton about Western Michigan. If they score like crazy, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They can score up to 40, 45 points a game. Occasionally they're held to, 2 touchdowns. Anything could happen.
Well, here's the game I'm interested in. I don't know if I'm interested in this game for the Upset Picks Challenge. I may be. I haven't decided yet. But Thursday, Diesel, we have one college football game on Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, Navy and Memphis. Right now, Memphis as a home team is favored by 5.5 points. This works out well because the NFL slate is really good at 1 o'clock. And then at 4:30, you have Cowboys Chiefs, which could be really good. And then the night game is like Ravens versus another bad team. The night game
should be Ravens Bengals.
Yes,
right?
Ravens Bengals. No thanks.
The return of Joe Burrow.
Both teams suck, though. Both teams are not making the playoffs. So I think you might want to turn on Navy. Memphis Thursday night. Any interest in Navy, the midshipmen knocking on Memphis Tigers on the road Thursday night?
That's an interesting one. It's Memphis favored by 5.5. You take away the 3 that you get for being a home team, you're really favored by 2.5. So Vegas is saying this is a field goal game.
Close one.
Where Memphis 8-2. Memphis is 8-3. Navy's 8-2. By the way, it feels wrong. It feels wrong making Service Academy cadet. No, they're not cadets. Midshipmen play a game on Thanksgiving. That feels wrong. That feels anti-American, to be honest. But Navy, the problem is Navy can't play defense this year. Like they can't hold anyone. You look at the last 5 games, they've given up 38, 49, 31, 32, 31. No matter what, Memphis is scoring 30 points.
Yeah.
So a Navy can score with a lot of different teams. They just can't stop anybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I always have felt like Memphis is a pretty solid program. I don't know that I'm going to take that one. I am looking at it, though.
It's interesting.
Because it's only 5.5. And then Friday, I think this line is really interesting as well. Friday at noon, the Egg Bowl. And again, I hate that game being at noon on Friday. That sucks. It should be at night on Thanksgiving, right? Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Ole Miss on the road, Diesel, is only favored by 6.5 points.
Interesting.
Isn't that weird?
Number 6 team in the country against, I wouldn't call them a bad Mississippi State team. They played pretty well. They play a brutal schedule.
They do.
Only favored by 6.5.
That's what I'm saying.
It's interesting.
By the way, there are 10, 11, 12, 13 games on Friday. There are 13 college football games to choose from, including Texas A&M versus Texas including Indiana playing Friday night, including Georgia Tech. Remember, Diesel, that game last year went into what? 97 overtimes.
A lot of state championship games this weekend.
Right?
In college.
And then Ohio State and Michigan, if you're interested in that, right off the bat, 9.5 points in favor of the Buckeyes.
This also doesn't seem like it should be a noon kickoff. They don't have lights in Ann Arbor, do they?
I don't know.
Isn't that still the case? They don't have lights there, so they play a lot of noon kickoffs.
And then Clemson, South Carolina. Are you interested? It's not going to do a lot for you in the upset picks challenge, but if you like Clemson, right now, Diesel, they are 2.5-point dogs on Saturday at noon.
Yeah, a lot to think about when it comes to the upset picks challenge.
Let's go.
I don't know yet where I'm going to go. When we come back, it is time for you Tolos to start roaring, to start crowing, whatever it is. Call in, overreact, make your predictions, say what you want to say, just say it with your chest. That's coming up next, Overreaction Monday on the Fan Upstate. see how many Tolos have enough stones to pick up their phones. I didn't mean to rhyme here. And call us 844-326-3663. It is Overreaction Monday. You can react to what you saw in the Clemson Furman or South Carolina Coastal games if you want to, good, bad, or indifferent. You can call in to say what you want to say about this weekend's upcoming Clemson and South Carolina matchup. Just call us and tell us what you think. Yesterday, Cole, I got a text from my sister, who is a Clemson graduate, who said, I'm mad that we gave up all those points to Furman. And I'm like, come on, that can't be true. You won 45-10.
What points was she talking about?
The 10 points.
She didn't like 10 points.
She didn't like 10
Oh
points
my God.
to Furman. She must have really not liked a couple of years ago when Furman outgained them on the day.
Ooh,
offensively. But I mean, that Furman touchdown was a beautiful touchdown throw. I don't know if you watched how much of it you watched. I texted you last night, Cole, trying to get under your skin a little bit.
Yeah.
And I readily admit it. I admit that I was trying to pile on because the Eagles were up 21-0. The Cowboys looked completely lost, like they had forgotten how to football.
And they did.
And you texted me back, you're like, I'm out in the woods. I'm not even watching this crap.
You know,
and then they come back 24-0 and win the game 24-21.
It worked out. Yesterday I was debating because I watched like Red Zone for 4 straight hours in the 1 o'clock window. And then I was debating, do I go deer hunting or do I watch the Cowboys? And I just said, nah, go hunting. And guess what? It gets dark early at 5 o'clock. It's almost dark. So by the time I think I got out of the woods, it was probably around halftime or so. And, you had texted me and 970 other 4 people had texted me and informed me that the Cowboys were losing. And I was following along. But
is it our fault that we scared the deer away?
No. I will say this. I'll tell you this. I checked out, though. And I got home, and I think it was 21-7. They were about to score again. And then I thought, oh, boy, I can sit down and watch now. So I didn't miss anything. It was the best of both worlds for me. Yeah. It was the best of both worlds.
Maybe that's how you should watch the Cowboys all season. Don't.
If it works, don't twist my arm. Don't twist my arm.
That sounds like a Seinfeld sketch right there. Your favorite thing in the world, you agreed to yourself to not engage with it because you want it to be successful. 844-326. Come on, texters. Call the station.
There we go.
We say, hey, call in now, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 all these texts come in. Like, is that the society we're living in nowadays, Cole?
Yes, it is.
Or I don't know if it's that you're too busy and you can't be bothered, or you're just flat out scared. My wife will not call the pizza restaurant to order a pizza.
You know what bothers me?
She has to do it on an app.
There are so many people that I have friends and family that are the same way. Well, let's just do it online. Well, you know what? You do it online, it's going to take you 30 minutes. I can call them and have it done in 2.
Right.
I'm the same way as you. I can't stand. If you can do it online, that's fine. If you want to do it online, but I'd rather just pick up the phone. I can tell you who's not scared. Tom in Somerville, he's not scared.
Yeah,
Dewey's not scared. But,
Dewey.
hey, to answer your question,
Dewey call before.
I know, really. To answer your question, yes. That is the society we live in. We have texters all the time. And you should see the text line, Tolos, who get their thoughts in and tell us we're idiots and, we'll claim to be experts on this or that, but we'll never, ever pick up the phone and have a debate.
Keyboard warriors.
Because they don't want to have a debate. Well, a perfect example. Well, Garrett Riley's not really running Garrett Riley's offense. Well, is that right?
How do you know that?
Okay. Well, why don't you pick up the phone and call and debate us? Give us the information you have. I'm with you, Diesel. Pick up the phone.
Those people don't have any information. They have an opinion. They have a thought. They read something that some account with 12 followers said online. Oh, I saw online that somebody said Dabo interviewed with Arkansas, because that was going around all over the internet over the weekend. Yeah. That was everywhere. Let's go to the phone lines. Bring in Tom in Somerville. He called in first. That means Tom has the biggest set. What's up, Tom?
Hey, guys. I was sitting there Saturday, and that was probably the happiest I've been
again.
since maybe August when it comes to just being happy about my football team. And, I've parlayed that into not only are the Gamecocks going to win on Saturday, they're going to send Dabo and those little old Tigers back up to Pumpkin Town where nobody will hear from them till June or July, okay? And we all know Dabo's not leaving Clemson, but if he ever did, this is the perfect time for him to skedaddle on out, especially after Shane and Heisman just run it up on Saturday. I've much like the Gamecocks offense, I found a new identity. The Gamecocks offense the last 2 weeks in the first half have scored 67 points.
Yeah.
I think that's probably more than we've scored in a stretch all year. And, we've seen Clemson, they got a few good players, but the Gamecocks have been battle tested against the SEC all year long. Ain't nobody Clemson played except LSU has battle tested them. The Gamecocks are going to show up on Saturday. We don't have a bowl game on the line. We don't care about playing in the toilet.com bowl. We got the Palmetto Bowl, baby, and the Gamecocks are going to stick it to the Tigers just like we did last year, and we're going to continue to own this state. The Gamecocks are going to send that orange out of the stadium. They're going to be in 5 points by 1:30, wishing they never stepped foot in Columbia. The Gamecocks are going to roll.
Score?
This new offense is legit. Heisman, his brother, they're going to run it up on the Tigers. The Tigers don't even have a chance on Saturday. It's going to be rocking. Sandstorm's going to be playing. And I'll tell you one thing. It's Saturday in Columbia, South Carolina, and it's time for Gamecock football.
Wow.
Thanks, Tom. What? That's it. I'm going to cut you off, Tom, because anything you say beyond that's just going to ruin the call.
No, you got to end on a good note.
Love it.
That's good stuff.
Let's go to Dale up next. Dale, welcome to the show.
Why, good evening, gentle people.
What up, Dale?
Cole.
How about them Cowboys?
Do you believe that we can go 6-1 in this stretch and at 10-6-1 and make the playoffs?
You mean win 5 of the next 6? Is that right?
Yes, I'm sorry. 5 of the next 6.
Yeah, I believe if you win 5 of the next 6, you're 10-6-1. I believe, yes, if you're 10-6-1, you are getting a wild card spot. What's going to hurt our Dallas Cowboys, Dale, is that loss to the Panthers. That loss to the Carolina Panthers is going to hurt us because there are only so many wild card spots unless the Panthers just fall dramatically. I don't think the Cowboys will have the edge in the tiebreaker department.
Correct. However, I believe that division may be decided by a 9-8 team and not a 10-7 team.
You talking about the South?
Correct.
Yeah, could be. But ultimately, the Packers tie and the Panthers loss is, if we don't make it, that'll be why. I think this Cowboys team can win 5 of the next 6. I do.
This is the other thing. If they do finish 10-7, our 10-6-1 is better than 10-7. We get in.
Yeah.
The tie is really beneficial to us. Green Bay did us solid. And I thought this whole time that loss was going to be more of a detriment to Green Bay than it would be to us.
You might be right.
And in that scenario, it proves true.
Well,
it could be 10-7, and us at 10-6-1, we have the better record. We get in.
Well, here's the reality of it, Dale. The reality of it is, for any of that to matter, we've got to take care of business. We've got to win 5 of the next 6, which will be incredibly challenging.
I think the toughest one will be Detroit. I think we beat Kansas City on Thursday. Kansas City is a shell of what they used to be. Detroit's the only one I think is tough. We can beat Minnesota. We can beat the Chargers. We'll beat the Giants. We'll beat the Redskins.
Wow.
Commanders, whatever you want to call them. They're always going to be the Redskins.
I like it, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
Hope you're right, man.
Let's go to the phone lines. Bring in Dewey, who's got something to say. Dewey, what's up?
Oh, yes. First of all, congratulations on your win. The Philadelphia Eagles proved that they suck
Yes.
and they're overrated. And here's the overreaction. They ain't making the playoffs.
Who?
They're going to tank. They're going to lose all their other games because they're not playing the football they were playing last year. They're playing garbage football. The Philadelphia Eagles.
I think they're going to make the playoffs, Dewey. I think they'll win the division.
No, they're not. But I'm trying to help you out, so just go with it.
Okay, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. They're not going to win another game. The Cowboys are somehow going to win.
Yeah, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Cole.
Going to win the division.
He's trying to help you.
Sorry, Dewey. What am I thinking?
And as far as the Carolina Panthers are concerned, Tampa Bay, they sucking too. So it looks like they may win the division on a losing record. That's the way Tampa Bay's going. They look like garbage last night. So I don't know what's going on with Tampa, but it's going to come down to Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay, who wins that division. Don't matter what the Carolina Panthers record is. Tampa's going to tank too, so they're going to have a losing record. What? A team's going to have a losing record going into the playoffs. That's a travesty. As far as the South Carolina Clemson game is concerned, Tom's right. South Carolina's going to go in there and take care of business because they have no choice. They're not going to a bowl, but they're playing for Shane Beamer's job, or at least his career or something.
Good Lord.
4-8 is not 4-8. 4-8 might be the end of Shane Beamer because the fan base is not tolerating this garbage no more. And as far as Clemson's concerned, I do give Dabo some little bit of credit for pulling Klubnik out in the second quarter in that blowout win against Furman, which they had no business playing Furman in the first place, but that's a class act. That shows Dabo at least is a class act person, unlike Lane Kifflin, who ran up 70 points on Furman last year. And another thing, y'all being off this week's a travesty, too. Y'all have too many days off. Oh.
Well, every day is a day off when you're Dewey and you don't have a job.
That's true.
So what is he giving us hard time for?
Oh, man. Dewey's pissed, isn't he?
Let's go to one more phone call. PT is on the line. PT, what's up?
Hey guys, I appreciate you taking my call. And Dewey is the epitome of overreaction.
Yeah,
right?
Good luck following that.
I know exactly, but I just want to mention the ACC basketball. I just want to say, I think, and this is definitely overreaction. I think that the ACC this year is the dominant conference. And I think we're going to have several teams making the tournament, and I think they're going to be back on top. North Carolina looks great. Duke looks great, of course, but the other teams have done a lot better, and they all, I know they haven't played anybody yet, but they're all 5-1, 6-1. So that's and I think Clemson's going to be good. So
Louisville too.
I think Louisville. I think the ACC is back, and I think I'll be proven right this year. And that was my overreaction.
Thanks, PT. Appreciate it. The reality of it is, right now, everybody in the conference is good because, to his point, Diesel, they hadn't played anybody. Right. The only team that has a losing record in the ACC right now is Boston College. Every other team has a winning record. Literally every team other than Boston College, who's 3-4, has a winning record. Yeah, Duke's undefeated. Yeah, Virginia Tech, Mike Young's undefeated. Hopefully Mike Young can make a run. Q's, UNC, Louisville, SMU, they're undefeated as well.
What I like about right now, again, you're right, very early, most of these teams have played 5, 6, 7 games tops. The top 10, I like the Ken Pom rankings a lot because it brings in a lot of data. Duke, Purdue, Houston, Gonzaga, Florida, Arizona, Illinois, BYU, Louisville, Iowa State. That is a spread right there. You got 2 teams in the ACC, 2 in the Big 10, 4 in the Big 12 sitting inside of the top 10, and then Gonzaga out of the West Coast Conference, Florida out of the SEC as well. You go down to 11 through 20. There's a lot of SEC teams in there. But I like the fact that there's a lot of dispersion in there. And we'll see what happens. Maybe down the stretch, Clemson continues to climb. They're sitting in 31 right now. North Carolina is sitting at 28 right now. There's certainly an opportunity for them to climb, but they better make hay while they can in these out-of-conference matchups to build up a little bit of resume, because just like the SEC when you're playing in football, you get credit for beating better teams, but if you're sitting outside of that top 30, 40 teams this early, all right, well, you beat a 45 ranked team. Well, what does that really mean for you?
And most of these games right now are being played at home in the ACC venues, right?
Sure.
So we'll see. Like a lot of these teams have started 5-0, 6-0, whatever.
Clemson at least deserves the credit they beat a Big 12 team and an SEC team
yeah.
in a neutral site road
and
game.
that's why I like those tournaments. That's why I like those not preseason, but early season tournaments, like Clemson just played in Charleston. I love those because you get a gauge on where you are, and I'm not saying the ACC in basketball doesn't give you a gauge, but there's just so much parity nowadays that you do get a good, it's a good measuring stick going down there and playing Georgia. And it's an overtime game, and it helps down the stretch. My last thing I'll say in Overreaction Monday, this is not sports related. I was going to save this for probably the Tolo takeover on Thursday, but we're off Thursday, right? I this is weird, Diesel, and I need your help on this. I don't understand something. So I'm watching these TikToks, right? I love to cook. I love TikToks where I'm watching these guys smoke meat, or
here's a recipe in 40 seconds.
Right.
Get it right.
I love that kind of stuff. But here's what I've got to figure out. I am today years old. You've heard that, right? I am trying to figure out why we say something that I've heard for my entire life, but I don't understand it. And I've never thought about why we say it until this past weekend when I was scrolling through TikTok. What am I talking about?
Question?
No, I don't. I say question. I don't understand why. If you're watching a TikTok, it's a cooking video, right? And now Thanksgiving around the corner, everybody's watching these, mac and cheese recipes. The person who's doing the video, Diesel, bear with me. They're going through the video, they're adding the ingredients. They add the seasonings. They add the, stock. They add the whatever, name your favorite type of seasoning. Lemon pepper. Oregano. They add whatever. You add all these ingredients. And at the very end, I was watching this video this weekend and I thought to myself, why do we say this? At the very end, you know what you always hear somebody say, and maybe I'm just dumb and don't understand why we do that. You add salt and pepper to taste.
Okay.
You add salt and pepper to taste. Well, don't you add all of those seasonings to taste? Why do you only add salt? Why does everybody say that? Have you never asked the question why every single recipe cooking video you ever watch, somebody at the very end says, and add salt and pepper to taste?
Well, it especially makes sense in like cooking a meal. Like with baking, you have to be very precise. Like those things matter, and it changes the way your cookies or your cake or whatever rise. But you're right. I mean, I guess
you're adding all the seasonings to taste.
You could just blend up some tomatoes and say, guess what? I have pasta sauce
to taste.
But you have to add, you're right. You have to add the oregano. You have to add the garlic to taste to get it to where you want it to be.
But what I'm saying is when they add the garlic powder or the onion powder or the paprika or the cayenne pepper or the chili powder, they don't say, hey, here's the chili powder to taste. Hey, here's the onion powder to taste. Here's the garlic powder to taste. But they say you add salt and pepper to taste. But your taste, explain that to me. Am I dumb? What does that mean?
You raise a really good point.
Thank you.
I know that in a lot of instances, salt like helps break down fats, right? So like you put salt in eggs while you're cooking it because it helps break the yolk down. Maybe salt helps break down the meat as you're searing your steak or you're browning your beef, whatever it may. Salt helps in the breakdown process. Those other seasonings don't do that.
But what does that mean when they say you add salt and pepper to taste? What does that mean?
Basically, maybe it's that the recipe calls for a minimal amount of salt and pepper, and then a lot of people have sensitivity is not the right word, but you have preferences when it comes to how much salt and pepper, especially salt. And a lot of people need to be on a low sodium diet. Maybe that's why they do that. I'm offering an explanation, not a reason.
I've just never heard them say, add the Italian seasoning to taste, add the thyme to taste, add the oregano to taste, add the parsley and the basil to taste. But for whatever reason, when I'm watching these TikTok videos, they're talking about adding salt and pepper to taste. I don't know. Maybe I'm
Who is this texter who's trying to catch me? Texter says, Cole, what conference is dispersion? Diesel said there's a lot in the top 25. What do you mean? When I say dispersion, I'm talking about the top 25 teams in the KenPom, meaning it's spread between a bunch of different conferences. I was talking about the top 10. There's a dispersion of conferences inside the top 10. What are you talking about here, Texter? You're trying to catch me in something. I don't think you're making the point that you think that you're making.
Is what conference is dispersion? Or is the Texter trying to make a joke saying that the dispersion is a team?
I just said there was a dispersion of conferences inside the top 10.
I don't know.
Meaning it's got a good spread. There's a good spread of teams. If you want me to use that word, Texter, then fine.
So we're getting some expertise in on the text line and the stream now on this whole salt and pepper to taste saga that I've uncovered. By the way, Tom in all caps says, here's an L for Clemson fans to taste. Dan B says, to taste means add as much as you need to your taste, not a specific amount.
But don't you do that with all the
seasonings?
You do
that don't you?
If you like a little less garlic,
you add a little less.
You add garlic to taste.
You need to ask your wife this question tonight because, a woman will have the answer. They have an answer to everything, right? Texter says from the, 612, salt and pepper to taste means to add as much or as little salt and pepper as you, the person cooking, prefer to make the dish good. But again, to Diesel's point, isn't that the point of every seasoning? Don't you put seasonings in dishes to make them taste good? Hurricane Jeff says, having been a cook, all that means is simply you put whatever amount of salt in it to make it taste like you want it to taste like, and the same goes for pepper. I get that. But that is literally what you do with every seasoning. If you don't like a lot of chili powder in your chili, you put the chili powder that you like in there to taste. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where you just have this aha moment and you're asking the question, why do we say that? That just tells you where my brain goes on these kind of things.
Another texter says, spread, ? Yeah, spread. That thing your mama did every Friday night's the reason why you're here, texter. Come on. What are you doing here? Why are we parsing every single word? What are we doing here?
Is this Tom?
Texter says, spread to taste. Good Lord. What are we doing? What are we doing?
What am I missing on this? What do you mean, Diesel?
I don't know. Texters are now hanging on every single word. They're
what
not
did
even
you
saying,
say about
They're not
spread?
even saying I said anything wrong. I use, instead of the word dispersion, I use the word spread. Those are synonyms of the same concept. They mean the same thing.
Oh my gosh. What's people's beef with this, man? I don't know. All I can tell you is I do get caught up and go down those deep dark holes of those TikTok cooking videos. I really do enjoy them. I
can do recipes on TikTok. It's too fast. Slow.
It is fast.
Down.
Hey, but most of the time they put the description or the ingredients in their bio or whatever. There's a link. So you can click a link and see them. My favorite though are the like the Louisiana guys, the jambalaya, all that. I mean, I think I have probably watched a million, especially with Thanksgiving here. I mean, I love the cooking side of TikTok. That's one of the best things about TikTok.
Wednesday of last week when I was out on location at Ingles, you were back here in the studios. Melissa handed me one of the Ingles. I forget what they call it. Ingles table magazines or whatever. Got all kinds of great recipes in there.
Yeah.
I set one down in front of my wife. She goes, how many of these things are you going to make me?
Oh, wow. You messed up there.
There's no, hey, honey, here's some recipes.
She's like, how many of those are you going to make? You messed up on that one. We've got to run off to a break. On the other side, games this week with college football playoff implications. Oh, my word. There are a ton. And I mean a ton of games this weekend that have big, big college football implications. We'll get to it next. Well, Diesel, this past weekend we had some teams across the country playing, cupcakes. Not the case this week. I'm not saying no team out there is playing a cupcake, but there are a lot of games on the line, on the slate this weekend with major college football implications. And I mean major, major implications. Let's go through these. I want to hear we don't have time to go into depth on every one of them, but I do want to hear your initial gut, your gut prediction, your gut lean, your early lean, what your gut tells you on these games that have major college football implications. We start with Ohio State and Michigan.
Oh, Ryan Day still has struggled beating Michigan,
right?
In his tenure there in Columbus. I think Michigan somehow finds a way to keep it close. I think Michigan's a really good football team, but Ohio State's just flat out better. Ohio State gets it done on the road, stays number one.
The streak comes to an end. I like Michigan and what this Michigan football team can offer. They're a good team. That's why the line's only 9.5 points. I think Michigan's a solid team. But I also believe that at some point, Ryan Day is going to get this monkey off his back. This is not going to go on forever. We've looked at it with the Clemson streak in South Carolina, that series, that rivalry, where South Carolina won 5 in a row, Diesel, and then Clemson turned around. They turned around and won 9 in a row. Clemson did. So, we wouldn't put it past Ohio State to rip off 3 or 4 in a row. I'm with you. I think that comes to an end, and I believe Ohio State does win. Also, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. This is a big one because Vandy, to my knowledge, they're still a 2-loss team. They're still a 2-loss team. You're talking about a number 14, Vanderbilt Commodores. If they want to be in the playoff conversation, Diesel, they need this one. This one's huge on Saturday.
Yeah, but Tennessee played really good against Florida. They played really good against, New Mexico State the week prior, and they even scored 27 in a loss against Oklahoma. Tennessee is playing really good football right now. They're playing great defense, good enough offense. Can they slow down a game changer like Diego Pavia?
But this feels like their Super Bowl. If you're Vanderbilt, you're not making the college football playoff as a 3-loss team. This feels like Vandy's Super Bowl, doesn't it? It's the in-state game.
I wonder here, though, if Diego Pavia's mom and Joey Aguilar's mom are going to have a feud on the sideline, because most people don't talk about this. Joey Aguilar's mom, quite a looker as well. Diego Pavia's mom was filmed. What was she doing? Twerking on a railing?
She was having a good time.
Having a great time.
She was having a great
I think I think Miss Aguilar has a little more
class,
poise. I was going to say class. Okay. Come on. I'm not saying that Mrs. Pavia is not a classy lady. But I mean, come on. That would be. Can we get a little hair pull? Just a little bit. Just not among friends.
On the side pregame. I don't know.
What do you mean? Do it at the 50-yard line.
I don't know if Tennessee, excuse me, I don't know if Vanderbilt's built for this moment. Maybe they are. But I do feel like if Vanderbilt's ever going to break through and become the team, and I don't know if this will be consistent after Diego Pavia, right? If they'll have the resources and the money to compete year in and year out. But if this is going to be their year, it feels like this is a must-win.
I did see Saturday that Vanderbilt has a huge quarterback commit coming in next year.
That's big. That's big. Hopefully he can live up to it, because now they've got a little steam, that train's rolling, right?
Michael Mitchell Jr.
Okay. We'll see. I think it's a big one. A&M, Texas, also Saturday with playoff implications. Georgia Tech, Georgia. Georgia Tech's just been a really interesting team so far this year, Diesel. They haven't been really impressive as of late.
But it's Georgia.
It's Georgia. You're not losing. You're not beating Georgia, right?
We would have said that last year, right? But it happened a different way. Georgia Tech took it to them.
What, 8, 9 overtime, something like that?
I hear they're still playing that game.
They could be. That one's a big one Saturday when you talk about playoff implications. Georgia Tech right now is
They need it. Georgia
Yeah,
Tech
they're
needs
16 Diesel.
They need a big feather in the cap.
Because right now they're on the outside looking into the college football playoff.
If it's 10-2 with a win over Georgia in the rivalry week, are you telling me that team is not squarely in the conversation?
You also have Indiana, Purdue Saturday. Indiana needs it. Texas Tech, West Virginia, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. That's a big one with the Lane Kiffin saga continuing, right?
Yeah.
The decision game. Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma, LSU. LSU did not look good Saturday. Let's just put it out there like that. They did not look good. They barely beat, Washington State. I mean, that was embarrassing.
Oklahoma, LSU feels wrong on rivalry weekend.
It does.
I mean, I know, hey, Texas got to have a rival, and they think their rival for rivalry weekend is A&M.
Yeah.
I would say A&M's rivalry weekend ought to be LSU. That's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
You
lived in Texas.
Well, Oklahoma, LSU doesn't feel like a big rivalry game.
You're right. I guess they do have they have State Fair, so they got that.
Ooh, yeah. Notre Dame, Stanford, a big one. Alabama, Auburn, playoff implications. Obviously, for the Bama, for the Crimson Tide, Diesel, you don't want to trip up against Auburn because you tripped up a couple of weeks ago against Oklahoma. If you don't get it done against Auburn, that would be the nail in the coffin for this season. BYU, UCF, major playoff implications. Arizona State, Utah, Kansas, Miami, Pittsburgh. Could Miami trip up again? Could they trip up again? Pittsburgh's not a bad team. Virginia Tech. Tony Elliott needs this one Saturday. SMU, Cal, SMU still trying to stay alive in the ACC hunt. Charlotte, Tulane, Temple, North Texas, and JMU, Coastal Carolina, having playoff implications. We talked about that last week with JMU, right?
Well, we're going to get into the JMU conversation next.
Let's
do
it.
I want to jump that gun.
We're
going to get into that next. So because we haven't yet had an opportunity to react to the new top 25, there's not a ton going on with teams inside that top 10 because most of them played as Sisters of the Poor.
Was it the AP top 25?
No, the college football playoff top 25. But James Madison, big movers of the week. And I think that sets a big-time precedent for group of 5 teams as they're trying to make the playoff in the future. So we'll talk about that.
Do it.
We'll discuss it. The new top 25 college football playoff poll coming up next. So I got a little out over my skis, Cole. I was looking at the newest, freshest AP top 25 earlier today, and my mind said, ooh, those are the newest, freshest college football playoff rankings. And that's incorrect because that doesn't come out until tomorrow.
I just thought you were ahead of the game.
You're not in program over there, I don't think.
That's probably better. What about now?
There
better?
You go. That's better. That's better. Otherwise, you sounded like you were talking from 10 feet away.
Probably better. It probably sounds better that way.
We'll see, though, if tomorrow the College Football Playoff Committee views James Madison the same way as the AP Top 25. AP Top 25 certainly came under a lot of scrutiny earlier this season, and we all remember what happened there. But James Madison has jumped to number 20, and as far as they're concerned, the best Group of 5 team, one spot better than North Texas and 2 spots better than Tulane. James Madison just beat Washington State over the weekend, beat them by 4 at home, which if Washington State was, if the Pac-12 was still the Pac-12, you'd say, oh, they just beat a power conference team. Bottom feeder of a power conference team nonetheless, but still they beat a power conference team. Now they just beat another Group of 5 head-to-head at home. And it seems, though, that those teams, those Pac-12 teams that used to be power, now they went from big P to little p, that still somehow holds a lot of weight with voters, Cole, because they have shot up to the best Group of 5 teams sitting at 10-1.
Well, we talked about, you and I did, I think right before the season started, about how James Madison was in prime position to be that team. Mm-hmm. And we also looked at Liberty, and Liberty has not had a good year, right? Liberty, you saw what James Madison did to Liberty back in September. They whooped them. It was 31-13. So JMU, there's no doubt in my mind, should be the team that gets in. That's my opinion. Are there other teams that are on the bubble? Sure. But Diesel, they lost to Louisville.
Yeah. JMU has a loss to Louisville.
That's it.
And a win over former power conference team, Washington State.
Correct.
And
this past weekend.
According to the AP voters, that's enough to push them past Tulane, that has 2 current power conference team wins over Duke and Northwestern, and a blowout loss to Ole Miss. Granted, Ole Miss is blowing out a lot of teams.
So that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
Tulane and JMU.
And North Texas. North Texas is in the next
that's true. That's true.
UNT.
So what you're telling us is the College Football Playoff Committee is going to have to decide between the 3.
Yeah.
Now, how much of the AP poll with JMU being ranked higher, how much will that play into their decision?
That's a great question, because JMU won by 4 at home.
Yeah.
Whereas North Texas and Tulane both blew teams out on the road. Now we have to really start saying, well, what is the competition here? Washington State versus Rice versus Temple.
Correct.
Those Rice and Temple are who North Texas and Tulane beat, respectively. Compared to Washington State, you got to believe, just off the top of your head, that Washington State's a better program and a better team than Rice and Temple, both Owls, oddly enough. So
this is why
they seem to be valuing, at least the AP is valuing, beating up on former Pac-12 teams.
And this is terrible. I hope one day maybe I can be proven wrong on this, but this is why I just don't know that it will ever matter that these teams are in the college football playoff, because the reason I say this, Diesel, is I think they're very good teams. And I would love, and again, not everybody agrees with me on this, I would love to see which of those teams truly are the best by them battling it out in their own college football playoff. That's not going to happen. But again, of those 3, how do you find enough data points to say, well, JMU deserves to be in over Tulane? I just don't know. I don't know that there's enough common opponents. That's where I think the committee has their hands full. I don't think they have the proper data points to truly decide between North Texas, Tulane, and JMU.
Well, like I told you last week, I had never felt this way until about a week ago.
Yeah.
And I still don't feel good about it. I still feel icky saying it, but I do kind of wish now that there was a Group of 5 national championship, call it a 4-team tournament. 4. There's 4 teams in. maybe eventually, that kind of thing expands. The only reason for the longest time that I pushed back against it so hard is because I was a fan of a team that was FCS, and I knew we had a really, really good team, but nobody in the SEC, no SEC fans, no Big Ten fans paid attention to what was going on in the 1AA playoffs. Just as now, I don't pay attention to what's going on in the 1AA playoffs unless Furman is in it. And we cover Furman.
That's right.
So I don't want to see the Sun Belt and Conference USA and the American and the Mountain West. I don't want to see them relegated to that second class 1AA status. But I also understand the reality of just the gulf of financial disparity between those two teams.
It's not even close.
It's not close.
No.
And unless Cincinnati had gotten in and won a playoff game a couple of years ago, unless, Boise State, I know they won a game last year. Nobody gives them credit for it.
Yeah.
But unless they somehow made this magical run, nobody would ever give those conferences credit of being competent and able to play with the bigger programs.
Let's see. Texter says, this is Brendan Burnett. He says, hey, Cole, here you guys pulled it off. We really pooped the bed in that second half talking about the Cowboys-Eagles last night. Yeah, you're right. You did 21-point lead, and the Cowboys scored 24 unanswered. Ben says, I got something salty for Clemson fans. Well, let's hear it, Ben. Let's hear it, whatever it may be. Speaking of hearing it, Diesel, there's some audio that we've got to get to. A good old-fashioned audio blitz next on the Fan.
from start to finish.
You're going wire to wire
With Diesel and Cole Bryson.
on the Fan Upstate.
A lot of audio. A lot happened over the weekend. We bring you that audio. We love bringing you that audio in an audio blitz. So much to get to. We've got Kalen DeBoer. We've got Dan Hurley talking about Thanksgiving, turkey. We've got Terry Bradshaw, Rob Gronkowski going at it. That was really awkward, by the way. Have you heard that yet?
The battle of the brain cells right there.
They were weirdly kind of going at it over the weekend. We've got that and a lot more. Diesel has a lot of audio. I've even got your boy, Dowell Loggins. Matter of fact, let's start with Dowell. No. Be more positive. Be happy about Dowell, will you?
Offensive genius comes in, runs the same 5 plays.
Diesel, don't you do that. Don't you. He's a good coach. He's going to be a good – give him time.
Are you sure?
No, not
How
really.
are you so sure?
I'm not.
How could you be so sure?
I'm not. But here's Dowell Loggins. Let's start with old Dowell, what he said on Saturday. Big win, by the way. Maybe.
I want to start and tell the fans how much I appreciate them showing up for our kids. And it's not always easy when you play, when you went through the streak that we went through. So, and that helped us in that game. That helped the emotions stay up. It helped when things got hard. It helped. And I appreciate our fans sticking with us because it matters. It does. We had a lot of good recruits here, and it matters to them because when you come off the field and they're talking about, Coach, that atmosphere is real. Coach, that atmosphere, it matters. So I appreciate, number one, for our kids, you guys sticking in the fight with us.
He appreciates all of the fans except for Diesel sticking with him.
God. He's like a little kid talking with a stream of consciousness.
Oh, Diesel.
Like every third word, he changes
though.
direction. Hey, that's great, but they won through defense, not because of him. Dowell Loggins has not shown me anything about being a creative offensive mind.
You got to give him
They won
time.
through defense.
You got to give him time. Matt
but that creativity's not there. Execution takes time. Creativity is why he got hired in the first place.
I'm just trying to defend the guy. Can I defend? Madcraft is like an hour late to the guy. I mean, literally, we had this conversation like an hour ago. And Madcraft just gets in on the YouTube stream and says, Cole, I think your confusion lies within the concepts of seasoning the cooking process and then seasoning the meal. The latter is the seasoning to taste. Well, Madcraft, are you like delayed on the YouTube stream? Because we literally, did it take him an hour to type that? Matt, we talked about that an hour ago.
So I brought up the seasoning as part of the cooking process. What was I going to say? Like salt helps break fats
but it's
down.
all part of the process.
And then there's the finishing seasoning, the salt and pepper. So I think Madcraft might have you on this one.
It's all to taste, though. You want to taste it all, Madcraft. You want to taste every bit of it. I mentioned Terry Bradshaw Gronkowski yesterday. This was awkward, and I don't really know what to make of it. See if you can help me.
No,
Believers or not a believer?
not a believer. They're so inconsistent.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's just not right.
Oh, okay.
You got it. What's wrong with you? There was a time when your team wasn't that good and you got it on a run, and here on television.
What team was
I
that?
went and told
We were
America.
in the playoffs every single year, Terry.
New
I mean,
England-
it sounded like you had a
Can't
losing
be
record. You were
talking
6 and
over
8 at
because
one time.
It's irritating to the viewer.
Panthers.
It's irritating to the viewer. For whatever reason, Rob Gronkowski not believing in the Carolina Panthers rubbed Terry Bradshaw the wrong way. One more time. I'm going to start that audio all over again. This was yesterday.
Panthers.
Yes. No,
Believers or not a believer?
not a believer. They're so inconsistent.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's just not right.
Oh, okay.
You got it. What's wrong with you? There was a time when your team wasn't that good and you got it on a run, and here on television.
What team was
I
that?
went and told
We were
America.
in the playoffs every single
England-
year, Terry.
New
I mean,
England-
it sounded like you had a
Can't
losing
be
record. You were
talking
6
over
and 8
because
at one time.
It's irritating to the viewer.
Panthers.
You don't need to be talking over me
Oh.
because it's irritating to the viewer, is what he said. He's mad about something, isn't he?
Gronk said, back up, Terry.
Back good, but all honesty, couldn't you hear that in Terry Bradshaw's voice? He is irritated with Gronk.
Yeah, look, I think maybe Terry Bradshaw's a little guilty here of
OMS
gaslighting. Gaslighting the Panthers fans, trying to say, hey, we looked at the ratings numbers, and there's a big old hole down there in Charlotte. Nobody in Charlotte's watching our show. So Terry, could you tell them how good the Panthers are a little bit? Tell them how they're making strides and things are getting better down there. And then Gronk's like, no, dude, they suck. They're up and down. They're back and forth. They got a quarterback who's 3'7" and he can't see over the line. What are you talking about, Terry?
I thought you were going to say Terry Bradshaw's guilty of OMS, old man syndrome, just being irritated. You know, old people just get irritated.
He's a grumpy old man.
He's grumpy.
They made 2 movies out of it.
This was weird. One more time. I don't understand this.
Yes. No,
Believers or not a believer?
not a believer. They're so inconsistent.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself. That's just not right.
Oh, okay.
You got it. What's wrong with you? There was a time when your team wasn't that good and you got on a run, and here on television,
What team was
I
that?
went and told America.
The Braves every single
England-
year, Terry.
New
I
England-
mean, it sounded like you had a losing record. You were 6-8 at one time.
It's irritating to the viewer.
Irritating. Terry Bradshaw Diesel's irritated. This guy's upset about something from Rob Gronkowski. He said there was a time your team wasn't that good. Gronk said, what team was that?
When did Gronk join the Patriots? I'm curious here. When did he add? He was drafted in 2010.
Okay.
Let's see. 2010 Patriots record. 2010.
I think they won 8 or 9 games. Just guessing.
2010, they were 14-2.
Oh, just kidding. Just kidding.
They were
right
pretty
off the
good.
bat,
So,
yeah.
so Terry's trying to make some kind of point. What's your point?
What's your point?
And his point.
What's your
is,
point?
Rob's point is, what do you mean? We were great when I joined the team.
So to your statistic there, yeah, they were elite when
He just added to the team.
Right.
What's your point? What's your point?
Yeah, they were. I didn't realize they were that elite.
They were
joined.
good.
That's insane. Sean McVay. And by the way, you talk about a game that wasn't close. My gosh, that Rams Bucs game last night, that was embarrassing, wasn't it? So this audio is probably my favorite audio of the day. Sean McVay was talking about betting on the guys in his locker room. Well, you know, in today's society, you have to be careful when throwing that word around because,
right,
you know, you're not allowed.
Pizza.
You're not allowed to bet on the people in your locker room.
Right.
Devontae Adams, though, made sure after Sean McVay spoke that the reporters knew what he was talking about. This is great if you haven't heard this yet. Sean McVay last night.
Because I'm betting on the people in that locker room, whether it be our players or our coaches. And
well, first, he's not actually betting. This is dangerous waters these days. Yes, figuratively speaking, he was. Yeah, I mean, I love that he would figuratively bet on us all day.
I love that he would figuratively bet on it. Devontae Adams, man, setting him straight.
People in that locker room, whether it be our players or our coaches. And
well, first, he's not actually betting.
Not actually betting. I mean, you talk about Diesel, your players having your coaches back.
Hey, that almost derailed John Mateer's season.
Yeah. Yeah. No betting happening here. Yeah. No betting happening here. Who was it earlier we were talking about Thanksgiving turkey with and getting tired? Was that Chappell?
Chappell, yeah.
And we were talking about Dabo. Like, I think Chappell said yesterday or tomorrow he was going to ask Dabo about the turkey.
What kind of meal? What kind of pregame meal? You got to stay light.
And making sure that you're right, too. You don't eat too much. Well, Dan Hurley talked about that. It's a serious thing. Here's Dan Hurley.
We're going to celebrate our Thanksgiving on Wednesday as a team. We're going to eat what's in the turkey, Bobby? No. What makes people sleepy? Tryptophan. So we're not going to eat the tryptophan on Thursday and be sluggish as on Friday. So we're going to eat the tryptophan, the turkey and everything on Wednesday so that all the tryptophan is out of our system by the time we get to MSG.
Woo!
Oh, now you can't talk about MSG. That's a whole different chemical.
Diesel. He dropped the F-bomb and the S-bomb about the tryptophan.
Why don't you just get a tryptophan-free turkey? Like, get a turkey that doesn't have tryptophan in it.
That would be incredible, wouldn't it? But you know what's weird about that whole tryptophan thing? I've eaten turkey 1,000,000 times in my life, but the only time I get tired after eating it's on Thanksgiving. I've never been tired. I ate turkey the other day on Saturday. I wasn't tired after I ate turkey on Saturday. So maybe you're on to something.
You know, the truth is turkey doesn't hold any more tryptophan than other poultry does.
I was going to say, so
it's basically the same. The content is basically the same. Problem is we all eat so much.
And the carbs,
you
probably.
Eat too much food, and then your body has to digest it all. That's why you get tired.
Yeah, and you're like overload. I mean, it's overload. So Dan Hurley got it figured out again for Thanksgiving. He's not putting up with it.
We're going to celebrate our Thanksgiving on Wednesday as a team, we're going to eat what's in the turkey, Bobby? No.
He said stuffing at first.
What makes people sleepy? Tryptophan. So we're not going to eat the tryptophan on Thursday and be sluggish as on Friday. So we're going to eat the tryptophan, the turkey and everything on Wednesday, so that all the tryptophan is out of our system by the time we get to MSG.
My gosh, he's got it figured out, doesn't he? He's got it figured out. What about the linebacker for LSU, Whit Weeks, over the weekend on LSU's next possible coach being his girlfriend's dad? What do you make of all this? Here's what he said.
A lot of speculation as to who the next head coach at LSU might be. Does your family have anything to do with the possible recruitment of this certain person to be the next head coach?
I don't know. I don't know if I can speak on that one right there.
Oh, come on. Pleading the fifth, I see.
Yeah, I plead the fifth on that one.
Not wanting to speak on.
Hey, earlier today, Josh Pate tweeted that he knows what Lane is going to do.
That's clickbait.
This is his quote. I know where Lane will be in 2026. All I can say is wow.
Clickbait. He doesn't know. It's clickbait. It is what do they call it? Engagement farming. That's
funny. I'm looking at a comment right now that says, "Man, this feels like engagement farming."
See? There you go.
He says 1,000%. Please click the tweet.
Click it.
So I retweeted it and said, confirmed. Welcome to Boone, Lane.
You know, I think that's up there. I think Boone's like plus 500 according to Vegas.
He's gonna push Dowell Loggins out and take the job.
What if he did though? What if he just surprised us all and went like South Carolina or something?
You know, back in the day, you played a lot of college football, EA college football, and you would just pick a small team and see how many seasons it took to get him to a national championship.
True.
Why not? It'd be fun.
Even though the guy's never won or played for a natty.
Yeah.
Right. I've got one more. This is Kalen DeBoer on the Auburn team that he's facing Saturday.
It's going to be a great experience there. And it'll be, one where we're facing a team that, wants to knock us off of our goals and our hopes and all of that. So, but you just really got to simplify it down and you got to prepare for the noise, prepare for the emotions that come, and that's what our season has done for us. We've been through a lot of that, and again, there'll be new challenges that present themselves in the game, and a lot of it will be again new matchup guys that have different people in front of them, strengths and weaknesses of the opponent. Every single week change, and so we're just going to prepare our best, focus on what we do because that's what we've done all season long. To go out there and be our best on Saturday.
I have a theory as to why a lot of Alabama fans don't trust Kalen DeBoer. Number one, lose to Vandy. You can't lose to Vandy. No, but this is rooted in psychology. Okay. Did you notice that Kalen DeBoer goes up at the ends of his sentences? It's like, we're going to go play at Auburn. I think we have a pretty good chance.
No,
because normally when you speak and you go up, it denotes a question or an unsurety of what it is you're saying.
When you go up?
When you finish with a down state, with a down, that's a declarative sentence. We're going to play Auburn on Saturday. I think our offense is pretty well prepared, and then we're going to go out there and run the ball well and find success.
On Saturday.
We're going to go find some success.
So you say like that last word when you turn it into a question, right?
Yeah. So like play it back. Just the first couple sentences.
It's trying, by the way. I had never. All right, here's DeBoer. I'd never thought about that. Let's hear it.
We understand it's going to be a great experience there, and it'll be, one where we're facing a team that wants to knock us off of our goals and our hopes and all of that. So, but you just really got to simplify it down, and you got to prepare for the noise, prepare for the emotions that come, and that's what our season has done for us. We've been through a lot of that, and again, there'll be new challenges that present themselves in the game, and a lot of it will be again new matchup guys that have different people in front of them.
I'm a nerd, and will watch like random YouTube videos about linguistics,
right,
and typically, like I said, finishing with an up denotes a question. it denotes unsurety, and it really denotes youth because as so many of the shows and TV shows a lot of people watch are based around California, a lot of people in California have always finished with an up. So
this is wild. What makes you think? I mean, where did you hear this stuff at? Or where'd you hear that?
I heard it explained to me by a linguist, somebody who studies the way people speak. It's the study of diction. And I was worried about saying diction because I know what the listeners would do.
No, they wouldn't do anything. Yeah. You know, I will say I did watch a lady, a female linguist. Is that what they're called?
Yeah. A linguistics expert. On a couple of weeks ago. It's funny you brought this up because I went down that rabbit hole. As you know, I'm right back down the rabbit hole of the Murdaugh trial, right? Because of the Hulu series. Sure, yeah.
And I watched like a 30-minute video from a linguistics expert on Alec Murdaugh on the trial. And she was just explaining every single little thing about, what he said and how he said it. And I was like, this lady's a crazy, I mean, there's no way she's right. Is she? Is there truth to that kind of stuff?
I mean, that's what the study is suggesting. I mean, there's also a generation of young girls that watched a lot of Kardashians, and the Kardashians have their local pride.
Yeah.
So little girls from South Carolina,
that's how they talk,
who wouldn't normally talk like that.
I've never heard.
They started talking like that because the Kardashians talk like that, and it grew.
Really?
Like there are people who study this. They study the way languages change and certain usages of words change and vocabulary and the way you speak. And that side of it has gotten more and more robust as we have the ability to record people's voices and save it long term. Prior to the invention of the tape recorder, you couldn't do that. You couldn't record somebody's voice and have it readily available to the level where you could study how certain words move.
That's crazy, man.
Different regions, but
that's crazy.
Vocal fry.
I never heard that. I don't like that.
Nails down a chalkboard. I'm not in the dating pool anymore, but I could not date a girl that says,
I don't know what you're. I've never heard.
Is your show
that's
over?
bad.
Can we go to the concert after your show?
That's really bad.
No,
that is really, really bad.
I mean, like, no. Can we? He said, "Can we go to the concert after the show?" Yes, we can go to the concert after the show.
You said that's the Kardashian effect.
That's how the Kardashians talk.
Wow. Gladly, I wouldn't know that. Not a Kardashian fan, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's all the audio I have.
Easy on the eyes, not so much.
We got
on
time
the
for
ears.
like one or two more.
Yeah, let's play Dan Lanning. He was ripping so many of these SEC teams that played nobodies this weekend, and he did it in pure Dan Lanning form. Let's play that one more time.
Let me try. Hold on.
Oh,
let me switch the mode. Try it now.
Where are you at, audio?
No.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Hey, there it is.
Somebody switched it from A to B.
Ooh, here we go.
All right, this conference is a really good conference. It's competitive, right? We didn't play Chattanooga State today, right? Like some other places, right? We competed.
So disrespectful.
That being said, it's tough playing 9 conference games. It's tough playing in this league, and we got to take advantage of playing a good team today and attacking that.
I don't know what it is. I love that guy. I really do.
Because he's a jerk.
I love Dan Lanning, man. I mean, who doesn't?
Here's the last piece of audio we got for you. Shedeur Sanders and his Cleveland Browns got the dub yesterday. He looked pretty good, by the way, in his first opportunity to start. Here he was on the field after the game.
Now, you told me before the game that you were going to show this fan base that you are who they've been looking for. How do you think you did that?
I think I showed a couple of great pieces. It's some things I wish, I could get back. But, man, a win is crazy. It's amazing, Off of 1 week of practice, you know what I mean? Just 1 week of practice.
You see how he changes from a normal person from respectful to
a Sanders.
To Sanders, yeah.
A couple of great pieces. It's some things I wish, I could get back. But, man, a win is crazy. It's amazing, Off of 1 week of practice, you know what I mean? Just 1 week of practice. So imagine, what a full offseason look like. It get dangerous. But it's just a 1 week of practice. So I'm just truly thankful, that everything happened.
He's like, wait a minute, I got a brand to uphold. I got to be legendary today.
Hey, all I'm saying is that guy better make sure he continues to play well, because if you're going to talk like that, like, I have no problem with him. I hope he continues to be really good. But, like, if you're going to be that way and act that way, you better be able to cash that check. Ooh. It's the NFL.
Mike on the stream is going after Dan Lanning in Oregon hard. What did Oregon ever do to you, Mike?
Man.
God,
I like Dan Lanning.
Like 7 or 8 straight messages going after Dan.
He's a likable guy, though. He's just, I don't know what it is.
He needs to be in the SEC.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we come back, it is time to talk South Carolina versus Clemson from the Clemson perspective. Grayson Mann of TigerNet going to join us next. here with the Palmetto rivalry, the South Carolina Clemson game, which, Grayson, we have a policy around here. We say it the order that the most recent winner gets to go first. So it is the South Carolina Clemson game, no matter how you may feel about it. Let's start right there. Big game, obviously, this weekend for both of these teams. I'm not sure you could overstate how much it means to both of these two fan bases. I've always argued that South Carolina and Clemson fans hate each other so much because they're exactly the same, like they're flip sides of the same coin. Would you say that is accurate, Grayson?
I would say their head coaches too are very similar, and I think that makes fans just even more furious. And before we get started, guys, I just want to applaud Cole's Cowboys for a big win yesterday.
How about it,
was
man?
Awesome.
Got to make
That
things
was
interesting.
awesome. They're going to beat the Chiefs on Thursday, too.
Going to beat
just
the
to let
Chiefs
you
on
know.
Thursday, and then they're going to win 5 of the next 6 and make the playoffs at 10-6-1, and then going to reel off 3 in a row and win the Super Bowl is what they're going to do, Grayson. Didn't you know that?
Oh, man. Let's go, man. It's here. It's your time.
You can always dream. It's interesting. You did mention that to Diesel's question about both head coaches being similar. Dabo Swinney and Shane Beamer, they've been seen at this game, before the game starts and even after the game, chatting it up. They are friends. They are, to your point, very similar in how they coach, their approach, what their priorities are off the field. Two similar guys, though. But when you talk about what they've done, both programs in 2025 have been in a rough patch. When you look at these two coaches, when you look at what's going to happen on Saturday, do you feel that this game, this rivalry game, still has the importance to where, you look at a lot of rivalry games, Grayson. I mean, a couple of years ago before Ryan Day won the national championship, Ryan Day was going to be fired because he couldn't beat Michigan. Do you feel like this rivalry game still has those type of implications?
I mean, yeah, if you look at it last year, in all honesty, it should have been the winner should have made the playoffs. And South Carolina and Clemson, in that vacuum that we had for a few hours after the Gamecocks took down Clemson on their home turf, it looked like Clemson's playoff hopes were done because there was no real option to get to Charlotte. The at-large bid was you win and you're in. And South Carolina came into your doorstep on your lawn and swooped it from you. So there's still that story. There's still that passion to this. And I think, honestly, guys, this game's much more important this year because both seasons have gone pretty poorly. And a win can do so much for a fan base. Where South Carolina, they're not going to be going bowling, but imagine what a Clemson win could do for that fan base for several months. And Shane Beamer, who's had a tough season after nearly making the playoffs last year, and for Clemson to ride what would be a 4-game win streak heading into bowl season and just sort of the turnaround that they've been able to sustain as of late. Not their best football, but wins are wins in a season where those have come pretty far and few between. So I would argue it's very important on Saturday. I know maybe nationally there's not as much interest, but I'm sure within the state, fans will be ready for noon on Saturday.
Grayson, this is a little premature to ask this question, but I wanted to put it out there just so it doesn't fly away out of my head. I wonder how many of these Clemson players are likely to stick around for bowl games. We've seen how many guys choose to go get ready for the combine, and you would hope that the Clemson culture would mean almost all of them stick around, but who knows after a weird season like this. So not asking you that question yet, but I do want to put that in the back of your mind. I want to ask you about injuries going into this South Carolina game. I know a guy or two that was expected to play a big role against South Carolina went down this past week. What's the absolute latest?
Yeah, Jaheim Lawson, Olsen, Pat Henry, as far as Sweeney has told us last night, they're both out for the season. With different injuries. Olsen, Pat Henry's came a little bit earlier in the first quarter. 4th down conversion, hit Klubnik. Klubnik hit him in stride and he got his leg caught up under him from a Furman tackler. And then Jaheim Lawson's situation, very frustrating from the tone of what we've seen from the fan base, is a guy that probably shouldn't have been out there in the third quarter with the second string team. And Lawson has got an ankle injury that's going to require surgery, and he's also going to miss time. And for a guy that's been one of your better defenders this year, I'd argue he's been better than the transfer acquisition than Helt and better than TJ Parker for a large part of this year. He's out. against the Gamecocks. So in a game that I think South Carolina, talent-wise, I think they have a slight edge over Clemson, especially with some injuries to the offensive line. That's trouble on all fronts.
Grayson, this team, this South Carolina team is a little bit different in areas. Obviously, the running back situation is not as good as it was last year, not as consistent with what they had in Rocket Sanders, but you are going against some of the same receivers and you are going against the same quarterback, a quarterback that beat you in the fourth quarter. I said multiple times last year that I felt like Clemson had the better team last year, but South Carolina had the better player, and that better player made some key plays down the stretch, right, that won them that game. Do you believe Clemson can game plan for this game and have an advantage in a way where they can subdue Lenora Sellers just simply because they've tasted, they've seen, they played the guy last year?
They've got a game plan prep for him, and I think if you're Tom Allen, you turn on that fourth quarter tape of Lenore Sellers, and this is what we don't need to do against a quarterback of his talent. And you saw it last year in that game, Cole, is Clemson had bottled it up for really that majority part of the first quarter. He had the big scramble in the beginning, and then was really held in check until that fourth quarter. And largely part of that is due to Sammy Brown not being on the field and being that counter speed-wise as a spy. So I'd expect Allen to hone in on that and use Brown's ability to go sideline to sideline and say, you're getting Sellers. This is your task all afternoon. And we'll see if that pans out. But Clemson has the experience. It's not like a conference schedule where maybe an SEC team didn't face Sellers last year and you're having to prep based off of film, not experience. This defense, who brought back a lot of starters, they've played this guy before. They've been burned by this guy before. And maybe that plays into Clemson's favor, that they've seen it and they know exactly what he's capable of.
Grayson, I know the sample size on this question is extremely small, but performance on the field has to matter. And on Saturday, we saw Chris Denson look really, really good in limited action. I get that he hasn't been on the field a lot. He looked more comfortable than Vizina. He looked more comfortable than Trent Pierman. Going into the offseason, are we talking about a real quarterback battle where a redshirt freshman could be jumping a guy like Christopher Vizina that's been on this roster for a couple of years?
Diesel, I've held the opinion that Clemson's starter for 2026 isn't currently on this roster. I do think that the portal will be the move that this staff ultimately ends up making. If not that, then probably Vizina. I think that Clemson's game plan for Denson is more of a 2027 outlook, where as a passer still isn't refined, and that's sort of the groundwork that Clemson's had to do in terms of his development. Is we got to get this kid to be able to make those deep reads, intermediate throws, sort of make him more of a complete quarterback. There's no doubt that this kid's a complete athlete, and I think more and more there should be packages for him to come in and make plays, because I know that it's the Furman backups, and I got a lot of pushback for saying this, but there's some juice to that guy. And I think in a season that's lacked a lot of that juice at the quarterback spot, you like what you see from 15, even in a limited sample size, as you had pointed out. So I'm not sure maybe he's competing for that starting job, but I think it very much depends on Clemson's moves in the portal. I'd say he's got a stronger chance to compete if they don't utilize the portal for that position. But overall, I do think Clemson's answer is still not on this roster when it comes to their starter in 2026.
Grayson, that would be bold, given the track record of Dabo Swinney and his usage of the portal. We know he dabbled in it last offseason, but it would be bold to bring in someone who touches the football every single play, right, offensively. Are you also going to go on the bold route that there will not only be a transfer portal quarterback in 2025, but maybe that transfer portal quarterback comes with a new offensive coordinator? Would you take that bold prediction?
It wouldn't shock me. I think that's the new trend that we're going to see. Oklahoma's said it with John Mateer and that Washington State offensive coordinator sort of coming in as a package deal. And you've seen what it did to the Sooners. And I think if Mateer hadn't been hurt, Oklahoma's probably a team with a bye right now going into the college football playoff, just the way they were playing in that portion of the season. And they're still going to make the playoffs if they can take care of business this Saturday, which is remarkable for Brent Venables, who has kind of spent the last several years building that program. But I do believe if Clemson were to take a quarterback out of the portal, that, yeah, I would say that you probably should bring that offensive coordinator with him, which it maybe limits your options, and it depends on who's the coordinator at Clemson. But I think we'll get our answer pretty soon following the Palmetto Bowl as to the vacancy or lack thereof at that position.
Before the bowl game?
Yeah, I think that staff changes before the bowl game. Dabo Swinney's done this before. He brought in Matt Luke and Chris Rumpf before the bowl game. And I think that a precedent has been set there.
At Gray_man21 is where you can find and follow him on Twitter. Grayson, one thing I've never understood, why don't we see Dabo using the portal as a second crack at a guy that he thought really highly of, that he recruited pretty hard and ultimately just chose somewhere else? Maybe I'm thinking sort of needle in a haystack because these guys are kind of scattering and going all over the place once they enter the transfer portal. But if it's somebody that Dabo had a high enough opinion of to recruit and to be locked in a battle with somebody, why don't we see him going after a second opportunity at players like that more often?
Michael, with Jeremiah Alexander, someone they came in second place for against Alabama, or it was Alabama, I think, early in that 24 class, and it just didn't work out with the Crimson Tide, and he had Clemson second, and so Swinney ducked back into the portal and said, let's do this again, and Alexander was an easy fit. So I think you're going to see more of that in certain instances, and I think it's an incident where you're going to see this across the country, where a lot of schools, they may have been in the top 3 or top 2, and they just keep an eye to see how things are going. So Alexander was precedent there in terms of the portal, and it wouldn't shock me if down the road, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, I'm not trying to, just because I haven't done my research on names in the portal yet. It's such a wild west, and so I'm just trying to get to South Carolina first and then sort of diving into those names. But it wouldn't shock me if a couple of those guys, that maybe 25 kids that Clemson was second for, they start to poke around again and say, we really liked you initially and you've grown a ton. Why not a change of scenery here?
Grayson, you mentioned Clemson's defense and what they learned a season ago when they played Lenore's Sellers. What do you think offensively they can utilize Saturday going against a South Carolina defense? Is pretty good, a battle-tested South Carolina defense. Do you expect wrinkles? Do you expect much of the same on Saturday? What's your forecast for this Clemson offense?
Yeah, it goes into what my main concern is with this offense, is that they're not able to run in between the tackles. And you saw that against Furman, which against an FCS squad compared to South Carolina's defensive line, that is going from maybe a minivan to a Ferrari in terms of quality. And so it's going to be a steep hill for Clemson to climb. So I would expect a lot of the responsibility to fall on Cade Klubnik's shoulders. And I would expect quick throws. I would expect screens to the outside. The inability to run the football, if they can find a way to do that, I think Clemson wins this game pretty handily, I would add, if they're able to be dynamic on offense. But if they're not, it becomes one of those games where, and keep in mind, Klubnik hasn't thrown a touchdown pass against South Carolina. They've really held this guy in check in these Palmetto Bowls, but that's probably just kind of the dictation of these games. It's been more lower scoring, and I would expect that on Saturday. And so when you enter a rock fight, does Clemson have a trick up their sleeve, or do they have something ready to go? And I think it would be a big game for these receivers. They got to step up and help out the quarterback.
Grayson, were you in Charleston yesterday for the Georgia Clemson basketball game?
I was not, but I was watching.
Okay, I was just curious. What might you have seen from Brad Brownell when it comes to kind of getting their head screwed back on right towards the end of that second half, where they went a little cold there for the last 3 minutes? It felt like Clemson could have walked away and won that game comfortably by 8 to 10 points, but ultimately they let Georgia stay in it by not scoring much at the end. And obviously once they got into overtime, the lid came off the basket and they were scoring again. So I was just curious what you might have seen or what you thought Brad Brownell might have said to them to wake them up.
Yeah, I think the shot selection was a little bit off in the second half. And so I agree with you. I think Clemson was a much better team when it came to the matchup against Georgia yesterday. And you let them hang around. And Georgia's offense is incredible. And you had that stretch there where you're able to kind of keep them in check. And Justin Porter came alive. Multiple three-point makes. You had Butta Johnson, who I've been a little bit disappointed with initially, came alive in this tournament. Dylan Hunter playing a lot more steady. It's a group diesel that I think last year we had games where Ian Shefflin or Chase Hunter or Victor Locken, like your usual cast of characters. It just wasn't a collective effort in terms of positivity from them, and you weren't getting a lot. And all of a sudden, when your top guys weren't performing well, things fell apart. This year, it's a little different where they really have to come together, share the ball well. There's not a guy that's going to get you 20 every night, at least right now. And so you have to rely on this kind of collective bunch of really smart basketball, making the right shots. And you've seen them not really crumble under that weight. They've been able to stay in a lot of these games. Georgetown, that second half's probably their worst effort, and still they were able to kind of keep it competitive for a majority of that matchup. So came away impressed that weekend with this team. I think the potential's there. You just want to see a little bit more of it, and they're going to get a big test against Alabama and BYU here pretty soon.
Grayson, before we let you go, it's Monday. You've still got Tuesday and Wednesday. You'll hear from Dabo Sweeney tomorrow, and then you'll eat a lot of turkey on Thursday. You'll recover on Friday. But what is your gut telling you on this Monday of how this game plays out Saturday?
Cole, this is a game in my mind that I've been looking forward to for a variety of reasons, and my prediction seemingly changes with the temperature in South Carolina as consistently as it does around here. It's cold one day, it's warm the next. Right now, I'm leaning Clemson on momentum and just the way they've been able to stack wins and play a little bit better. I haven't been completely thrilled with it. And I see a South Carolina team that has kind of been the inverse. And I know the competition has been much more stark. I mean, Alabama and A&M, you hold that against Florida State and Louisville. It's not comparable at all. But there has been a formula with Carolina and why they've struggled this year. It's down to that second half. They haven't really been playing their best ball, as Clemson's kind of found a way to not shoot itself in the foot as much. So right now I lean Clemson, but the injuries to the offensive line really concern me, and I think there's a formula for both teams. It could really, I'm 50-50, and right now I'm sitting here like, it's tough. It's one of those more interesting games to try to dial into and study. Right now I lean Clemson, but man, it's tough. It's really tight.
Grayson, you're the best. Good luck to you on Thursday. Good luck to you maybe walking around on Friday, as we're all kind of going to be laid out in a star position on the ground, just letting our bodies digest and from eating all that food. But we appreciate you as always and look forward to talking to you again next time.
I got a tea time Friday, so I got to really recover.
Wow.
There you go.
Life's good if you're Grayson, man.
Thanks, Grayson.
No load management here. Diesel, Cole Bryson, and the TOLO'S go the distance on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate.
I'm Chuck Sanders. Here's the Sports Flash presented by Progressive. College football Saturday, Clemson took a 31-3 lead into the half en route to a 45-10 win over Furman. South Carolina routed Coastal Carolina 51-7. The Panthers and 49ers square off tonight in Santa Clara, California. Carolina will be without three starters tonight. Linebackers Christian Roseboom and Trevin Wallace are out, along with center Cade Mays. Women's hoops on Sunday, number 2 South Carolina beat Queens University 121-49. Clemson rolled past Furman 76-58. Men's hoops in overtime. Clemson over Georgia 97-94. South Dakota beat South Carolina State 82-81. Northwestern nipped South Carolina 79-77. Furman over Queens University 90-79. Illinois State beat Coastal Carolina 94-42. Yale over Charleston 74-63. The Fan Upstate's your home for Furman Paladins football and Burns High School football. Search the Fan Upstate on the TuneIn, Odyssey, and iHeartRadio apps. I'm Chuck Sanders on the Fan Upstate.
Hey, Gamecock fans, I know your season has not gone the way you wanted it to go. However, I can make it better. No, I can't make the record better, but I can make your experience watching Gamecock football better all season long with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. You can build your Gamecock lineup on Prize Picks by simply choosing more or less on player projections for the remainder of the season. Gamecock fans, it's the best way to have a good Saturday. Regardless of the outcome, you can win on Prize Picks. I use it every Gamecock game day, as you should. Again, Prize Picks, build your lineup in less than 60 seconds. Make sure you download the app today if you have not done so already. And I haven't even told you the best part. Once you download Prize Picks, enter promo code COLE, C-O-L-E, for $50 deposited into your Prize Picks account after your first $5 lineup. Again, that's promo code COLE for $50 deposited into your account after your first $5 lineup. Must be present in certain states. For more details, visit prizepicks.com. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right.
This is where it starts.
where your story begins. This is the trail you blaze yourself. And step by step, you get stronger, faster, better. This is where it starts. How will you finish? Ingalls, we're with you every step of the way.
Injured? Just call Joy Law Firm. 864-888-8888.
All the times, check. Lower rates, double check.
Final segment of the show, and Diesel, we have neglected Dan Morgan. We've neglected Bryce Young. We've neglected Dave Tepper. What am I talking about? Do you know the Carolina Panthers play in what, an hour and a half, 2 hours from now? We hadn't even had a chance. Just shows how busy we've been. We hadn't even talked about them.
No, I've been intentionally not talking about it because I feel like anytime I say anything about this Panthers team, they do the opposite. As soon as I say they're going to win, they lose. As soon as I say they're going to lose, they win. I can't figure this team out. I don't know who they are. Maybe Gronk was right. They're too inconsistent.
Okay, inconsistency may be true. But tonight, a big, tall task as the Carolina Panthers Levi Stadium, Diesel, Monday Night Football. The lights are bright, and the San Francisco 49ers are favored by 7.5 points. The total is set at 48.5. The 49ers are 7-4. They've battled a lot of injuries this season, but the Carolina Panthers, hey, they're 6-5. I don't know if the Panthers win the game tonight. Winning might be a tall task on the road, but don't you feel like 7.5 points is also a lot of points with, hey, Rico Dowdle running the football the way he's been able to? Who knows, Diesel? Who knows?
Yeah, maybe Rico has a monster game. I mean, they were able to beat the Packers on the road. So, yeah. I mean, it can be done. The 49ers, they're not invincible, right? They're 7-4. They've been, you want to talk about inconsistent. The 49ers have traded wins and losses going all the way back to week number 4. It was win against the Cardinals, lose to the Jags, win against the Rams, lose to the Bucks, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth all week long or all season long. And guess what? They won last week.
Here's the deal. I don't believe Diesel Bryce Young is going to do another 400-plus yard game, right? We all believe that. However, here's the recipe tonight. If you're the Carolina Panthers, the 6-5 Panthers going on the road, wanting to get a huge win, which, by the way, would really put a flag in the NFC South, right?
They would be in first place, sole possession of first place.
You see what I'm saying? You've got to go into San Francisco into a couple of things. Number one, the Carolina Panthers tonight have to take care of the football. You've got to protect the football. You've got to win the turnover margin. And I also believe that the Carolina Panthers tonight have to establish the run game. If you can't establish the run game against this really good San Francisco defense, Diesel, they'll eat you up. They'll make you one-dimensional, and one-dimensional is not what you want to be on the road. I'm not saying go in there and give it to Rico 30 times, but you feel like tonight, in order for the Panthers, if they win, Rico Dowdle would have to have a big night.
I've always been complimentary of Bryce's ability when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter last drive to pick up yards.
Yeah.
He has not shown the ability to do that consistently throughout the game until last week. So he has not had one of those monster complete games since then. Rico Dowdle also had some audio, didn't get a chance to play it today, where he said he feels like every week is an audition for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, well, it's a good point.
And the rest of the league, too. I mean,
That's
somebody's
true.
going to throw a lot of money at him if he can keep stacking up good games.
We'll see, man. We'll see. I mean, you never know, but you've got to run the football tonight. You've got to run the football if you're the Carolina Panthers, right? You just have to. There's no way you can't. TOLO'S Upset Picks Challenge, Diesel, tomorrow. You ready?
That's it. 4 o'clock. We'll get started.
From first snap to final whistle, Diesel and Cole Bryson have you covered on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate.